Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Tuesday, May 7th, 2018 meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard. My name's Tim Wessel. I'm your captain today. And the first thing I'd like to do is just check in with Jan. I believe it has been properly warned.
It has.
We were here at 5:30 to go into executive session. So I'd like to convene the regular meeting.
Do my best.
And the first point of order is to approve the minutes of April 16th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes of April 16th, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes 4-0. And the first is chair's remarks, and today I do not have any chair's remarks. I'm sort of unexpectedly chair, so I didn't have anything prepared. And manager's comments is next.
Thank you. I have three announcements this evening. The first is of particular interest to businesses and residents downtown related to the latter stages of the water main project that we are completing. I guess first, broadly, we thank the whole community for being so resilient and working through this with us. It was an important project for us to get done and get done quickly, and there's been great work done by the contractor and by the Public Works team. And we can see the finish line from here, but one of the important additional tasks to be done involves a cutover of the service on High Street that's going to affect the Brooks house and that block of Main Street. And so that's going to actually happen tomorrow evening, that the water will be completely shut off beginning at 10 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, May 8th. And it will go all night long, extending into the early morning hours. We expect that all service will be restored to all properties by no later than 7 o'clock in the morning, and we hope earlier than that. The addresses that will be affected are 120 to 136 Main Street, 4 to 26 High Street, and 44 to 48 Harmony Place. We also want to announce that early voting has begun for the merged school board election. Early voting for Brattleboro voters can happen at the town clerk's office during regular business hours. And if you choose to vote in the actual election on election day, that will be here in the municipal center, but in a different place than we've ever held one before. Down in room 105 on the first floor of the municipal center, on the north side of the hallway on the first floor, is where the records department and the detectives in the police department were when they were here in this building. That is vacant space at this time, and so it's space that is suitable. It creates a nice loop, actually, a place for people to check in and then vote and then cast their ballot and walk out a different door there. So it'll work well for this election. Just this one time, because we weren't able to be at the Legion. We apologize. We announced a few months ago that all future elections will be held at the Legion for the next 10 years. That is true for all regularly scheduled elections, and it will be true for all special elections whenever it can be true. In this particular case, on May 21st, from 8 in the morning to 7 p.m., the voting will be in room 105 here at the Municipal Center. And I'm delighted to announce that we have hired a human resources director for the town. We're very pleased to announce that Sally Nix will join our team on Monday, June 17th. She and her husband are going to move up to Brattleboro from central Massachusetts, where she has been employed by the Fitchburg Public School System in their administrative support staff for the past 23 years. Sally has been for the past 8 years a human resources generalist there, working in every aspect of human resources management as part of a 2-person HR team that has served an organization of over 800 employees. We actually joked with her that we feel really lucky to have a single HR professional who's going to be serving our team of about 140 employees, and her ratio is going to improve because she's been with 2 people serving 800, stretched even thinner than that. She had worked previously, prior to working in the HR department, she had worked in other central office positions, and for a time was president of the local administrative employees union. As part of our vetting process, she met not only the management team and an interview panel, but also many of the employees, some of the employees as she was touring around from department to department, and it was all a very positive reaction. We had a strong field, 30 total applications, did telephone interviews with 11 applicants, face-to-face interviews with 5 semifinalists, and spent approximately 5 to 6 hours each in varied settings with each of 3 finalists. So it was a rigorous process, a very competitive process. We had really good applicants. Sally emerged from that strong pool as the best qualified and most likely to provide the combination of HR leadership and cultural awareness that we need. So we're really looking forward to having Sally next join our team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sort of breaking protocol, I'm very excited about this new hire that we've made. The next up is Select Board comments and committee reports. Does anyone-
Just add just a couple of details to what Peter mentioned about the merged school district election. The ballot is unusual in that you'll be voting for, Brattleboro residents will be voting for representatives from all 4 of the towns. You'll be choosing 2 representatives from all 4 of the towns. And so that's a little bit, I just wanted to make that point because it's hard to tell what you're supposed to do when you first look at it. And if people, there is a, BCTV will soon post a video of the candidates forum that happens Sunday evening. And there is some other information about candidates at the Supervisor Union website, which is wsesu.org, Windham Southeast Supervisor Union.org. And there's a tab there that says schools. And if you click on that, you will find the WSESD instead of U, the Windham Southeast School District tab. And that's where the information about the election is, because that's the name of the new merged district, the Windham Southeast School District. You can become an informed voter.
Great. Thank you. And I think that link is already up. I think I saw it go by.
I hope so.
Terrific. Anyone else?
You're right.
Daniel?
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to the young artisans and entrepreneurs that have put together the Main Street Flea, which is happening at 61 Main Street downtown right now. They have their spring pop-up. It's been running since last Thursday and will run until Sunday, May 12th. It's a collection of artists, artisans, craftspeople, creatives, young folk that we're happy to have in the town and that we'd like to attract and keep more of, I think. So shout out to them.
That's great. Liz, do you have anything to share?
Not this evening, no, thank you.
Great. So the next item on our agenda is public participation. We're going to do this one a little differently too. We have a couple of groups, folks here with us, and I think they're just going to stand at the mic. Is that correct? And first up is going to be something pertaining to the Boys and Girls Club.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. For those who don't know me, my name is Ricky Davidson. I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club here in Brattleboro. And I've come and asked the Select Board to do a special proclamation for us in the month of May because this is the 20th anniversary of the Boys and Girls Club in Brattleboro. Boys and Girls Club is a national organization of over 4,000 clubs and affiliation all over the country. But 20 years ago, in May of 1999, the Boys and Girls Club officially came to Brattleboro, and what was once the Teen Center converted to the Boys and Girls Club in May of 1999. So I've just come to ask for you to do that. Willing to answer any kind of questions related to stuff. Last Friday evening, we had a little bit of a media kickoff and some birthday cake at the club on Friday evening, and we'll be doing other things over the course of the summer just to kind of celebrate this being our 20th year. And right now we have over 1,000 registered members, and we serve over 3,200 youth every year, and we're serving about 250 meals a week for free for youth and families in the community, and doing tons of programming. And this summer we're adding a 9th week of summer programming for the first time ever. So at the end of summer, there'll only be 3 days where families will have to find childcare before school starts. So we've added extra time and extra spaces for that to happen this year. So,
Thank you so much. I, for one, very much appreciate the work of the Boys and Girls Club, and so happy that you're here. And I'd love to read the proclamation, if you don't mind.
yeah.
You guys don't mind if I read it?
No?
So this is a proclamation to celebrate the Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro's 20th anniversary. Whereas the club has over 1,000 registered members between the ages of 6 and 18 years old, and whereas the club serves over 3,200 youth annually, and whereas the Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro is open over 290 days a year, offering life-changing programs, positive adult role models, and whereas the club is open at least 30 hours a week for programs and activities in the arts, character and leadership, education, sports and fitness, and healthy lifestyles. And whereas the club serves over 6,900 meals and 8,500 snacks annually to youth and families. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro offers 9 weeks of summer programming. And whereas 100% of regularly attending club members graduate from high school on time and with a plan. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro is celebrating 20 years of inspiring youth in the greater Brattleboro area. Now, therefore, the Brattleboro Select Board does hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as Boys and Girls Club of Brattleboro Month, dated Brattleboro, Vermont, in the 7th day of May 2019, signed by the Brattleboro Select Board.
Thank you very much. Really.
Has it been signed?
It has been signed except
And
for
would
our
you like to
chair.
present it?
Certainly.
Brandy.
So it has been signed by these board members?
Yes.
And we can give it to you now, or we can get Brandy's signature at another time?
Yeah, we get Brandy's signature. I'll be happy to come by and get it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Next up, I think we have Chloe Leary from Child Care Counts. Winston Prouty.
Yes. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am Chloe Leary. I'm the Executive Director of the Winston Prouty Center, but I'm here tonight representing the Child Care Counts Coalition of Windham County. We're a coalition that's been meeting a little over a year and a half, and our focus is on maintaining and increasing quality child care slots in Windham County. And so sort of trying to raise awareness about how it's such an important part of our economic activity in the region. A lot of people aren't aware of that. We celebrate in this region the month of the young child in April. I know it's May. I tried to get here in April, but it didn't quite work out, so let's pretend that we're still celebrating. And the coalition felt like it was a good time to raise awareness amongst people about childcare, partially triggered by the fact that there was a program you may have heard of in Brookline, Sunny Lane, earlier this year was going to close. They gave families 2 weeks notice that they needed to find alternative care. 52 children were impacted. They weren't all early learning, some of them were after school program, but that's a lot of families impacted. And that, it was a crisis, really. And the West River Valley is not as robust with childcare programs and options. So fortunately, Susie's Little Peanuts, which is a program from Windsor, came in and bought it. So everything's good. But I think it really exposed the fragility of the sector in a way that is an opportunity for us to think about how do we want to be invest in or be aware of, or at least understand the choices we're making around childcare. So if you think about a program closing, the impact and the ripple effect of that is really large. So a business closes. It's a business that bought goods and services, employed people, as part of our economic activity. It's a business that allows people to participate in the workforce. So suddenly people might not be able to get to work or have to decrease their hours. That might decrease their income. They can't pay their taxes or their mortgage. So there's that layer of impact. And then the employers have employees who can't come, and then productivity is impacted. So one childcare business closing has a layered effect that other businesses in some ways don't have. And that awareness, I think, is really important for people to have on the radar. So we think about childcare as a two-generation approach to economic development. We're growing our future workforce. So we know that 80% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 3, 90% by age 5, before they even get to kindergarten. So, and it's all early education at that point. So high quality environments are really giving them the foundation they need to participate in school and beyond. And then as just availability of allowing people to participate in the workforce, sort of contributing to families being able to be part of doing what they want to do. So if you think about that, why it's important then to consider childcare is really part of infrastructure. So there was a commentary yesterday in the paper where I make the pitch that it's like roads and broadband. And when we think about the demographic of Vermont aging, and we want to attract young people and we want them to stay here, we better think about childcare as a piece of that infrastructure. So when I think about Brattleboro, so I just want to let you know, you might already know, I know I'm talking to people who are pretty aware of the issue in lots of ways. We have 22 regulated programs in Brattleboro for infants through age 5. So I'm not counting after school like the Boys and Girls Club or Aspire, which is also sort of part of childcare. 22 programs, 15 of them are based in center-based. So the Prouty Center, Mulberry Bush, Brattleboro Center for Children Horizon. 6 of them are home-based. One of those I think is a regulated program, but it's in a home. And then 1 is in a school, public school at Oak Grove. So 17 of those programs offer infant toddler spots, which is the high pressure point, I would say, for care. And none of those programs have openings right now. So if you know anybody who's pregnant and is hoping to find care, I hope they're on some waiting lists, because there's a lot of pressure on the market for thinking about how, if we want to even maintain, if we're worried about programs closing. And it's not a market that, it's not a business that makes a lot of financial sense. You know, we don't charge always what it costs to run the business, because if we did, we'd price families out of the market. So it's a really, it's a complicated field. And then the workforce development issue is a really big, sort of another piece of work that the coalition is doing. So I think our main point is to raise awareness, understand how it's part of economic development, and to think about when things, still what's happening right now. There's a bill that came out of the House unanimously, H531. It's an investment bill. It's in the Senate Appropriation Committee, as far as I know. And actually, Emily Wagner's here from Let's Grow Kids. She's part of the coalition. She might know more about the bill than I do right now and where it stands. They're a statewide group that does advocacy in public education. So knowing that there are people working on these issues and investing in, letting our legislators know, our senators know that it's important, something to do. And also the city of Burlington has done an interesting scholarship program. So I think there are regional, local things we can do while we're also advocating at the state level for investment. So I think, again, just having it on the radar, understanding that it's important, and that at least to understand that we're making a choice about what we want to invest in for the future, and that it's not just about families with kids and their issue. It actually connects to all of us. So I have packets of information, if I may approach the bench, so to speak.
You may.
Bring them out. So the Burlington program, there's a sheet in here. There's some information about a survey we did last year.
Thank you.
Which has some very compelling anecdotal data and just general information. So to read at your leisure. And I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any comments or anything.
I certainly have a comment. I recently became a father again and found out firsthand how incredibly important and tough it is to find childcare around here. We were lucky, and a lot of families aren't, because it essentially allows us, my wife and I, both the ability to have a career. And without it, we simply couldn't both do it. So it's incredibly important, not only, I think, for workforce development, and I like how you put it with the infrastructure phrase, but also for childhood development. I really believe it's important to throw them into an area where they can learn from other kids and just have that interaction right from the start. And sometimes that's absolutely necessary right from the start for working parents. So that's just my comment, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. Since no one else is saying anything, I'd like to just say this is one of those areas where we as a select board have to remember that there are incredibly good agencies working on these problems, and they can't do it alone. They need support from taxpayers and volunteers and select boards, and we certainly couldn't do it alone without your help, so thank you for being here.
Tim, I congratulate you also, but I would also like to have more information about this financial assistance program. Could you tell me more about that?
Sure. So the state of Vermont offers financial assistance to families who are income eligible to pay for tuition at early learning programs. So there are guidelines around who's eligible. So actually what was interesting in the survey this year, Windham Child Care, with whom we merged a couple years ago, they used to do a survey, and a similar survey around parents. What we found in this survey is that often families who are in a lower income bracket have assistance to the financial assistance program. And then families are really caught when and you'll see in the survey data, they make good income, $75,000 a year, and they just can't make it work because tuition's so expensive. So people are falling through the cracks of that program. But in terms of...
Is that like a benefit cliff situation?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, H531, which is the bill that is moving theoretically through the legislature, is trying to address that. I think it's being cut a little bit, but so it's an important advocacy piece because we're stuck, I think it's related even to the $15 minimum wage. Love to pay people $15 an hour. So in order to do that, I'd have to increase tuition, which is already $1,000 a month at Prouty. 90% of our families get some form of scholarship or financial assistance, but it is really, it's really hard to afford it. So we administer that program locally, so families call us for help. There is a part of the program that specialized or family assistance childcare. If you're not income eligible, you can still sometimes get assistance through our local children's integrated services team. So there are some options, but I'm happy to. There's lots of details that I'm not even aware of, but we do administer the program and could give you more information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chloe, isn't there a, clarify for me, the state passed legislation a couple years ago funding 10 hours of preschool for 4-year-olds, is that correct?
So the public pre-K is all 3, 4, and 5 year, or 3 to 5 year olds are eligible for 10 hours a week of tuition in a qualified program for 35 weeks a year.
Right.
So what that translates to right now, and it's several years, it's been through a few iterations. Where we are right now is that families get about $3,000 off their annual tuition bill as a contribution to that, which is a huge help.
Yeah.
It's a little funny, 10 hours a week of which 10 hours is it and who's eligible? And it doesn't really, families' lives don't work that way. So it's awesome and it's a little challenging, but we make it work.
And the other thing is since you're on TV and there's an audience of millions watching, if they're not watching, they're going to stream it tomorrow. So you might want to, if you could give us an update on 531, where you think it's going or do you think it's going to get through this session, and what do you think needs to be kept in it for people that are willing to or feel strongly enough that they would contact their legislators?
Sure. So the 3 major pieces are increasing eligibility for financial assistance, including the amount that you receive, and the broadening who is eligible to hit a wide, like 350% of federal poverty, or just broadening the eligibility. And that's the biggest chunk, I think, of the bill. There's workforce development, professional development, helping people pay for more education because the regulations increased, how to qualify to be a teacher. So there are requirements, which is great. And then how do you help people pay for it when you don't pay them a lot? So there's money in there for that. And then there's actually a little bit of money for children's integrated services, which is a little part of the bill. I don't have particular, it's that fight for resources and the scarcity mentality. And I don't, Emily, do you know if there's anything they're looking to cut pieces off of it, and I don't know.
Pieces off and
Yeah, could you come to the mic so the TV people can hear you? Thank you. Introduce yourself.
I'm Emily Wagner. I work with Let's Grow Kids.
Thank you.
And my understanding is that they're wanting to cut pieces of it, but for the most part, it'll be focus on workforce development and increasing the eligibility of the financial assistance program. And so yeah, we'll see how it falls out. It's in the budget committee. Is that it's being wrapped up in the budget process. So.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Daniel, just checking in. Did you want to interrogate?
I feel like you all did a lot of interrogating, and I know that we've got a lot more on the agenda, so I'm going to...
Great.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
the
your
work.
time.
Thanks for being here. Yeah. So, since we are still in item 6, public participation, we now go back to our regularly scheduled program of open public participation. So this is the time when you can come before us and just speak your mind on any issue that is not on our agenda tonight. Just as a reminder, we're all ears, but we can't take actions legally on any of the subjects you might bring up. And we try to ask people to keep comments to 2 minutes. Anyone here? Right here. Introduce yourself, and we haven't seen you in a little while, right?
Truck problems. I'm Nick Nickerson. I'm a 5-year resident here in Brattleboro, 67 years in Old Dixie. In deference to my speech phobia, I want to say only one more sentence. After one customer claimed he got PTSD from the TVs at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the manager saw fit to turn off all the TVs. Thus, the rest of us don't have TVs to watch, and I feel that this is unfair. Any questions?
Speechless.
No, I don't. I guess I do have a question. Where are the TVs?
TVs are up in the air, left and right, in the dining room.
Oh, I see, at the Kentucky Fried Chicken.
And my point, which I was prohibited by my phobia from saying, is that I think people should adjust. You know, I'm up here adjusting to my problems, and it would be very easy for him to turn his back and never see either TV. The TVs aren't turned on, so he could be completely oblivious to them. So the rest of us have to suffer. And it's not right, and it's kind of ignorant.
I think you have a valid point. Thank you for
Thank you, sir.
sharing and speaking. Anyone else for public participation in the back?
Hi, Gershom Moore, local resident, Brattleboro, 17 years. I just want to say thanks to the more visible police officers walking around. I've noticed a lot of interesting things happening, and I feel a lot more positive being outside, and I hope everyone else is too. But thanks, that's it.
Thank you, Gershom. Anyone else? Great. Seeing none, we will launch into the rest of our meeting. And now is the time when we magically become liquor commissioners. So I'll entertain a motion to do so.
To do the magic.
I'd like to make a motion that we become liquor commissioners.
Wonderful. Can I ask all those in favor of doing just that? Say aye.
Aye.
Great. Aye. And so that makes us liquor commissioners, passing 4-0. I think first up is a anticipated liquor license that a lot of people in our community will be excited about. Am I doing this, or are you?
Once you ask
Oh,
the
sorry.
representatives to come forward, and then I'll be happy to give staff's comments after they present.
I'm not too good at this yet. So Shin-La Restaurant is our first up, and could they, come forward, please. We have a little table set up with a microphone. And
You get to be on TV and tell us a little bit about the business.
I'd like to introduce you to Jimmy Lin. Jimmy Lin comes to us from China via Brooklyn, and Jimmy Lin has been in the restaurant business for ever since he got here, I think over 10 years, and is a chef and the owner of the Shin-La now.
wonderful.
Having purchased it from Mrs. Kim, and he is an expert in sushi. And they're open. He and his brother is helping him. They're open for business, and I don't know if you know, but the Shin-La has a tremendous following in Brattleboro. And not much is going to change. The menu hasn't changed yet, but I brought it just in case someone wanted to look at it.
Can we order now?
If you don't mind, just have a seat and introduce yourself, if you don't mind, just so we know.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's easier on the BCTV if you
And I'm Jeff Morris. I'm an attorney here in Brattleboro, out of Costello, Valenti, and Gentry.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sean?
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks. You should just nudge.
Welcome. And staff has reviewed the materials that are required to be submitted for folks to get a liquor license, and everything is in order. The police and fire departments recommend approval of this application. It is, of course, as all other liquor licenses are, subject to final action by the state. So the action you take here tonight would move this forward, and ultimately the license would be issued by the State Department of Liquor Control.
And I've got one other comment too. Jimmy is married and he is a new father. And in March, little baby girl, and I have pictures. And I've asked him to make sure that he's everybody in our office is anxious to see his baby. So I'm renewing that.
Hold
right
the
now.
picture up to the.
Yeah, I could do that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. It's an
And-
important institution.
Has Jimmy recently moved to Brattleboro with his family?
Jimmy has moved to Brattleboro. He lives on Elm Street right now, and eventually his wife will come here too, and newborn baby.
Great.
And is there a brother? Did I read that in the paper? Or
Yeah, his brother Danny, his younger brother Danny's helping him, working in the restaurant as well.
Well, welcome again. I'm sure at the restaurant they could put up a picture of the
You
child.
should, that's for sure.
I would entertain a motion. Should somebody have one?
I move that we approve a first-class liquor license for J. Lynn Incorporated, doing business as Shin La Restaurant, located at 57 Main Street.
Okay, we have a motion to approve a first-class liquor license for J. Lynn Incorporated, doing business as Shin La Restaurant at 57 Main Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, 0, so that passes 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much.
And next, we have ELDIN LLC, doing business as Bella Notte. Bella Notte. Would you like to come on up? Hello. Oh, good, we have enough chairs. Have a seat, and
rows between two.
you could just introduce yourselves and let us know.
My name is Abbas. I'm one of the partners and brother of the main owner, ELDIN. We are the owners of a restaurant and a country club of Brattleboro, which is the name of the restaurant is Bella Notte, which formerly was in Bernardston, Mass. We also own the restaurant in Greenfield, the country club of Greenfield, Terrazza Restaurant. So now we are currently working for Brattleboro Country Club until we get approved the license that we can have it transferred to our names.
I see. Do you want to just do, I'm sorry, I
Sure.
didn't turn to you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So this also is all set to be approved. It's been reviewed by the police and fire departments and approved by them. And town staff recommends that the select board approve the request for a first-class liquor license.
Do you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Dave Henry from the Country Club.
I'm Erdin Skunjeli from Country Club as well, Bella Notte restaurant.
Great.
He's the mate. This is the chef, and this is the big guy.
Just doesn't do nothing, just talks.
Good.
I only
Just gotta
cook.
give a
Every trio needs one of those guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Did Bella Notte used to be up on the hill?
Yes, up in Bernardston on the hill.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're bringing a great quality of food, not the dancing though.
Requires an extra permit.
What kind of food will it be?
It's a Northern Italian cuisine.
Okay.
So.
Great.
And also now, because we're in a country club, we also, it's pub food as well, burgers, wraps, salads.
Sounds great. Nice to hear that you have some good
Thank you.
experience.
Thank you very much.
I did enjoy the one, I think I only had one meal there. It was great. I will entertain a motion.
I will make that motion. I make a motion to approve a first-class liquor license, outside consumption permit, and entertainment license for ELDIN LLC, doing business as Bella Notte, located at the Brattleboro Country Club, 5259 Senator Gannett Drive.
And we have a motion to approve a first-class liquor license, outside consumption permit, and entertainment license for ELDIN LLC, doing business as Bella Notte at the Brattleboro Country Club on Senator Gannett Drive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have the Latchis Pub. Last but not least.
Thank you.
You can
I'm David Ingerman, the manager of Basement Pub LLC, and also the majority owner of Vermontos on 1111 Putney Road. We had gotten prior approval for a permit and have delayed opening for a variety of reasons. Probably the most important reason was my right-hand person and bookkeeper was in a tragic accident in the Bahamas last summer that's made international news with her and her daughter, and with her not next to me, it was very difficult for me to move forward with anything. She and her daughter are doing well, and I've since found new people to support her function and feel comfortable to continue the process and open and be an asset to the town. So the other thing that has delayed us is originally we were going to operate solely the pub first and open up the downstairs, and we've been working slowly and diligently to completely rehab the building, and it's about 95% complete now. We've had the fire marshals review everything, the state liquor health inspector and the Department of Natural Resources, and they've approved everything along the steps. So we need, I think, one more approval. So we're very close.
Wonderful. I'll turn to Peter to just ask if everything's in order.
Almost, with the exception of the one more approval. That,
Right, we do
mentioned,
need a
so-
final fire marshal's approval.
Yeah, so that's actually called an occupancy permit, and the motion that we're proposing for you tonight would approve the request, subject to the state's issuance of the occupancy permit.
Okay,
I have a question.
sure.
Is this occupancy permit relating also to the flood control, or is the Department of Natural Resources handling that?
The Natural Resources Department they're using a prior approval from 1991, I believe, for the basement. And the upstairs, since there's no history of it, they're grandfathering it pending the fire marshal's approval. But there was a plan for the basement that they're accepting as under Natural Resources.
So what efforts have been made to guard against the flood damage that happened after Tropical Storm Irene?
Well, the flood damage, I was not there at the time, and the flood damage was, I believe they've did quite a bit of work afterwards to reinforce the basement of the building. So that I think some structural issues occurred. This was prior to my time, and I believe that work has been done. So the building was strengthened after the flood, but it also operated for several years after the flood. So that
Well, the pub did, but the basement didn't.
I think they had the kitchen down there, did they not?
Yeah.
They didn't actually use it for, after the flood, that is.
Mhm.
They didn't use it for occupancy.
Well, I'm just puzzled that in all these overlapping permits, no one's looking at that issue.
I can't speak specifically to that. If the board wants more information about that, you could defer this matter and we can get that for you. I would say that the question before the board this evening is the liquor license, and there are state authorities that have jurisdiction over issues like whether a building is properly protected against flooding or otherwise safe to occupy.
Would that be part of the occupancy permit?
I don't know whether
Pending?
I don't know whether it would be something that's continuing to be reviewed as part of that occupancy permit or whether it is.
But I do know
separately
that
reviewed by
the Natural Resources is involved. Also, after the event, I believe that the Latchis Corporation did substantial work in the basement under the guise of the fire marshals. So I believe that the building is to code, and that I don't see any issue related to the building that would stop the operation of or the gaining of that permit. That's the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
And all the state departments I've spoken to have not indicated that there's a problem there.
When we conduct our staff reviews of these applications, one of the things we're checking for is whether everybody else who has to grant approval has. Normally, as you know, they come before you and all the rest of the paperwork is in order, and the last thing they need to do is get your approval and then the state's approval for the liquor. Again, in order to speak to it definitively, we'd have to postpone this for 2 weeks, but I believe, based on the recommendation that came forward from the fire department, that since the occupancy permit is the only remaining issue, to the degree that I would say that either any concerns related to the flood vulnerability have been addressed by the authorities that have jurisdiction for that, or that it is in fact being addressed as part of the occupancy permit. But I don't know the details of that, and if you'd like to know that before you act on this, then we can bring that forward for the 21st.
Well, I would, but I don't know how everybody else feels.
The issue is, I'm not sure that by the 21st I'd get any definitive answer on that anyway. So that would be, it's something that I will address with the fire marshal to make sure that in their process, they'll review that as well. But I don't think in the next 2 weeks that I'm gonna get the fire marshal and the natural resource department to make any definitive decision like that.
Well, Peter, will you be able to interrogate someone at the town to answer
Sure,
that
we
question?
as staff would provide, if the board decides to defer the matter, we'd provide you a further staff report in preparation for the 21st that would answer that question.
That sounds like a good way to go.
Actually, I would rather we do the process that we're here for, which is liquor commissioners, and ask for a report. Because if there is an issue, which the rest, it's not going to go forward anyway. But I wouldn't want him to have to wait 2 more weeks to get the business up and running if that's not an
Is
issue.
the business up and running and ready to go?
It's very close, but I can't hire people until I get it's a chicken or the egg situation, because I've got staff ready to go. I've got all the things done. We've made a significant investment in the building. And at this point, throughout the 2 years, your question, while it's a valid one, has never been raised. So it's,
Well, I don't understand that, but, so, Dave, you're proposing that we grant the liquor license and the occupancy permit would be pending and subject to whatever you can find out?
I don't think the occupancy.
That's not our jurisdiction.
It's not
So
our
yeah, if I
jurisdiction.
could just clarify, so if you move forward tonight, what I understood Dave to be suggesting is that you would move forward with the action that is within your authority, which is to approve this, subject to the occupancy permit being issued by the state, since that's the one outstanding regulatory piece that we know is missing at this point. But that we would get an answer to the question about floodproofing from staff and provide that to you as information. Again, I think the question for you as a group is that sufficient, or do you want to have the answer to that question before you act on the request for the liquor license?
I'll just say that I'm fairly comfortable with the person before us because he's got established history of a liquor license, and the place has an established history of, even after the flood, having secured a liquor license from the town. So I don't really see that it's really within this motion, this action's purview to slow down his progress, because as you said, you've been through a lot with the unfortunate accident and everything. So just, that's where I'm sitting with it. So,
Before we have a motion, when people come and get their liquor licenses, we usually invite them to take advantage of the masses tuned in here and say a little bit about what the business is going to be like. And
well, the upstairs pub is going to be operating full-time 7 days a week, probably. The basement is only going to be used on very certain occasions, usually Friday and Saturday nights. The other side is that I'm extremely cognizant of the issues related to flooding in town, because both my locations are very close to the flood zone. And I would think it would be foolish since we're using the basement so infrequently, to be openly not careful about scheduling an event during an event like that would just be a bad business decision. So if the restaurant was operating 7 days a week, I'd be more concerned about it, but our hours are going to be so limited that it gives us the opportunity to be very restrictive of when we would open. And everybody at the Latchis is extremely cognizant, that both the theater and the hotel, about watching the water levels. So concern about the flood stage situation in Brattleboro is a ongoing concern, not just for me, but everyone at the Latchis. And certainly public safety, the safety of the customers and employees is a primary concern of mine, and would be extremely careful to not schedule any event during a storm of magnitude that could present a public danger like that.
And so are you in the flood zone, and do you have flood insurance?
Well, we're not open yet. Flood insurance, we do have some level of flood insurance. Once we open, we'll probably review that. I don't believe the Vermont House has flood insurance per se. They've had some issues in the basement there, but the basement in the Vermont House is not occupied. Here, I've been told about the event that occurred and back in the and believe that the building itself is structurally sound, and that given plenty of warning and the exits, that we could get everyone out of the building in plenty of time in case there was some kind of a high water event.
Well, with all that's being said, I'm content to vote on the liquor license, but be informed about the future of the.
Great.
Thank you.
And I would think that the Latchis is anxious to have it open too. They used
Extremely
to do
anxious.
dinner and a movie events and things like that.
Yeah, it's the plan is for Thursday and Friday, Saturday nights to be open from 5 o'clock till and have the downstairs entertainment till after the theaters close. But we plan not to stay open past midnight at the latest. We don't want to be the last man standing in Brattleboro. So.
Yeah, that can be taken. Okay, well, I think it's I could entertain a motion.
Let's give Daniel a chance.
Yeah, I got it, thanks. So I move to approve a first-class liquor license and entertainment permit for Basement Pub LLC, doing business as Latchis Pub, located at 6 Flat Street, with the following condition: that the Brattleboro Fire Department review the occupancy permit issued by the Vermont Division of Fire Safety before the town clerk is authorized to release the license to the Vermont Department of Liquor Control.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, one moment. We have I have to repeat everything oddly. I try to shorten it. I have a motion on the floor here to approve a first-class liquor license and entertainment permit for Basement Pub LLC, DBA Latchis Pub, located at 6 Flat Street, with the condition that the Brattleboro Fire Department review the occupancy permit issued by the Vermont Division of Fire Safety before the town clerk is authorized to release the license to the Vermont Department of Liquor Control. I failed at shortening that one. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Now, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I was interrupting you. You just need to.
Oh,
adjourn
yes,
as liquor
yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners? So moved. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That passes 4-0. We are now no longer magically liquor commissioners. We are up now on to new business, and the first item on the agenda is a farm tax stabilization program.
Thank you. So the Farm Tax Stabilization Program has been in effect here in Brattleboro since 1974. It provides tax relief to individuals and families who are operating farms actively. And the purpose of it, as you can imagine, thinking back to the era in which it was created, Brattleboro was developing pretty rapidly, and there was a desire in the community to go beyond the relief that is provided through the current use program at the state that provides some statewide incentives to keep land in either agriculture or forestry, and to provide something locally that was a incentive to keep family farms operating in that fashion. Most of the time over the years, this has not required select board action because the rules of the program are pretty specific, and over the decades, the participants in the program provide the documentation that makes it clear that they're eligible for another year of participation, and that's all handled administratively. For the past 4 years, we've actually had a recurring item here before the select board because there is a provision in the procedures, in the policy related to the Farm Tax Stabilization Program in Brattleboro that allows well, first let me say that one of the standards that must be met is to make at least 67% of the household's income for the people who live on the farm. At least 67% of the income for those people must be provided from the operation of the farm. And again, in most cases, for those participating in the program, that's still true. And over the years, it's been almost true for everyone almost every year. In recent years, what we've seen is based on some transitions for certain of the families that are involved in farming in Brattleboro, there actually has been a need to follow the waiver provision. And what happens when individuals are continuing to operate a farm, but not making 67% or more of the income for the household off of the farm, they have an opportunity to apply for a waiver from the town. The procedure, because there's a lot of personal financial information involved in this, the procedure calls for the finance director, the chair of the select board, and the town manager to meet to review the circumstances and the request for the waiver, and to make a recommendation based on our private review for the select board to consider and act upon in public. This is the 4th year that the Robb family farm has asked for a waiver based on some generational transition that's occurring for the Robbs. And we once again find that the Robbs are entitled to the waiver and to continued participation in the Farm Tax Stabilization Program based on the fact that they are clearly continuing to farm the property. And in fact, while they've changed the method of farming and they're no longer a dairy farm, they've actually in material ways increased the farming activity, the agricultural activity, and diversified it on the property. So we do recommend that you grant a continued waiver for the Robb family farm. Also before you tonight is a separate request before you for the first time. Lisa Holderness has reopened the farm at Brook Meadow Farm, which had not been previously participating in the program. That's on Upper Dummerston Road, across from the country club near Fairwinds Farm and Wild Carrot Farm. But this is a separate property that Ms. Holderness has brought back into active agricultural use. She has been communicating with us for the last 1.5 years or so and wasn't eligible for the program last year. Technically wasn't eligible for it this year either because she couldn't meet the 67% requirement. But she did assure us that she was making more than 60% of her income off of the farm, and that the she was applying for a waiver to participate in the program because she's in the process of ramping up that activity. She's bringing a formerly active farm back to active use. And so she believes that in the future she's going to meet the 67% requirement. She asked for relief this year to be allowed to participate in the program and receive the tax relief even though she's short of that mark. We believe that's a good request. We believe it's justified. We're recommending that you approve it, subject to 2 conditions. One is that we see tax documentation that would confirm the representation, the accuracy of the representation, that more than 60% of her income is indeed coming from the agricultural activity at the farm, and that this be a 1-year waiver, and that we review this again next year to see if indeed she has ramped up sufficiently to be making more than 67% of her income from the farm.
Thank you, Peter. Do we have anybody here to speak to this, or just checking? Farmers get up early. So I just wanted to clarify one thing. If so, for at least we know for a fact that Lisa Holderness might be coming before us again next year. Would that be automatic, or if she reaches the threshold, then certainly?
Exactly. So her expectation and our expectation is that a year from now, she's going to show us tax returns from calendar 2019 that are going to demonstrate she made more than 67% of her income from the farm, and she'll automatically qualify administratively for the program and not need to come before you. But without a crystal ball, we thought it was important to have the action before you be definitively a one-year waiver because of that expectation that she has suggested to us that this is just part of the process of bringing the farm up to full activity.
Okay. Does anybody have a comment?
I do.
Oh, great.
I think both of these actions are well within our goals to encourage and maintain small family farms. And I would vote in favor of both of them.
Anyone else?
Ready to go?
I have a couple of questions.
Oh,
how many farms locally participate in this program?
There are, sorry, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, about a half a dozen
Okay. Yeah.
that participate.
All right. And the purpose of this program is to provide a bit of tax relief to help people continue to farm the land?
Yes, so it forgives the municipal portion of the local property tax. Okay. So they still pay school taxes in an amount that is adjusted based on the current use program statewide, but they don't pay the municipal portion of the local tax.
Okay. And the Robb family farm has kind of shifted their farming focus.
So,
is that right?
Yeah, what's happening there, they have done that, but that's not really what's driving the waiver. It's the generational transition from Charlie Sr. and Helen as the major operators of the farm to Charlie Jr. being the major operator of the farm. They have some income within the two generations of the household from sources other than the farm.
Okay.
The consideration that the major consideration for us in reviewing this and making a recommendation to the board each of these past 4 years has been there is no decline in the amount of agricultural activity at the farm. They're actually very actively working the property, and because of the maple sugaring operation that they've grown since ceasing the dairy operation, they're actually much more actively using the whole property and certainly generating a substantial amount of their family income off of the farm. It's just the particular circumstances of the family is such that they're not meeting the 67% threshold.
And they were just named Vermont Farm of the Year.
Indeed, it was
strange.
Ironic to see that this morning, that they were just received that honor as you were going to be considering this tonight.
Well, we better wave them in if they're Farm of the Year.
I've had the syrup direct from the thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty good syrup.
The boiling thing.
Yeah, the boiling thing.
And since you brought it up, Daniel, I'll just say that I took a look at this too, just because I think it's important to check in with these things as you guys did already, and for the taxpayers to remember that this does equal actual, discounting off of what the town is going to receive. In each case, it's about $4,500 worth of real money that the town is not going to receive. But as Liz pointed out, it's a really important thing, I think, to support. We have very limited family farms here in Brattleboro, so that's why we do it.
And the town has clearly over the years reaffirmed that perspective as well.
Yeah,
including in our town plan and through other actions. It's an important part of the community, and so the community grants this special consideration beyond what's available through the state tax law.
Indeed. So if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll make the first one. I move that we approve the continued participation of the Robb Family Farm in the fiscal year 20 Farm Tax Stabilization Program.
David has moved to approve the continued participation of the Robb family farm in the fiscal year 20 Farm Tax Stabilization Program. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, 0, so that passes 4-0. And for...
I'll make the next motion.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve participation of Lisa Holderness's Brook Meadow Farm in the FY20 Farm Tax Stabilization Program with the following conditions. 1, that Ms. Holderness provide the town with 2018 tax forms documenting income from farming amounting to no less than 60% of her total income. And 2, that an agreement between the town and Ms. Holderness be drafted by the town attorney which allows for 60% income from farming in 2018 and requires 67% of income from farming in 2019 and beyond.
And that's one thing. Sorry, I should have said this during the earlier comments. I want to make clear that the recommended requirement of an agreement is not a special requirement unique to the Holderness circumstances, but rather every farm that enters the program and enters into an agreement with the town. There's a standard form agreement so that they all are agreeing to certain obligations to continue farming the land in exchange for the tax relief that's provided through the program. The reason why we're asking for an agreement with the Holderness farm and we didn't ask for that with the Robb farm is that we have an existing agreement with the Robbs. But we need, because the Brook Meadow farm will be new in the program, we need to have an agreement put in place for that.
And she could apply for a waiver next year
Absolutely.
if needs be.
Absolutely. So the reason for the wording is that it just makes clear that it's a 1-year waiver at this time for the 60% instead of 67. Next year and beyond, it needs to be 67 because those are the rules of the program. But under that agreement, she'd be entitled, like any other farmer would, to come back and ask for a waiver next year if the circumstances warranted it.
Great. Thank you for that further clarification. Okay, we have a motion up to approve the participation of Lisa Holderness's Brook Meadow Farm in the FY20 FTSP with the conditions just mentioned moments ago. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And 0 opposed. It's unanimous.
Very good.
Thank you. Yeah, short. Nice to catch that. The next up, we might be looking at Steve coming up, if you don't mind. That's going to be a certification of compliance with town road and bridge standards for the Vermont Agency of Transportation.
Good evening.
Steve Barrett. Good
Steve
evening.
Barrett, Public Works Director. I'm here tonight to seek approval for our certificate of compliance of town road and bridge standards. It's required by the Vermont Agency of Transportation, and also it follows good practice for the town to be reconstructing roads or building bridges that meet standards. Also, by passing these standards, it also makes us eligible for additional funding from the state and FEMA during FEMA events. So it's very important that we approve this. Then the standards apply to all the construction, repair, and maintenance projects on town roadways and bridges. So the Department of Public Works recommends that you approve the standards.
Great. Any questions, comments?
No.
Steve, just because I occasionally look at social media, would you like to explain to us who is in charge of the bridges going over the Connecticut River?
Over the Connecticut River, the New Hampshire is.
Okay. Just wanted to
And,
make that on the record.
And technically, it's on the Vermont side, it's the low water mark from 1927. So at times there's maybe 10 feet in on the bridge, but we have an agreement with the New Hampshire AOT. They take care of that section, and they have.
Yep.
As far as the whole bridge as a whole.
Yep.
And we could fight over the 10 feet, but that's not the way we operate, so.
So you might also say that if somebody had a problem with one of those bridges, they might have to talk to New Hampshire.
Or they could, it's not unusual for somebody to contact Public Works Department, and then what we'll do is we'll pick up the phone and talk to our friends over at AOT and,
Because you have the hotline.
yep.
Yeah,
So,
great.
you know, if people do have a problem, they can certainly call us.
Sorry for going rogue on that.
No, I like it.
It's a good thing for people to understand because it's kind of strange. A lot of people think there's a line right down the river, and that would make sense, right?
Yeah.
But I
It's
think
not the Lincoln Tunnel.
right.
There's a line right down
Is
the
there?
middle. Yeah.
But I guess that was done back in the day because it saved us, the state of Vermont, money to do it.
And controversy.
I have a question about the thing that we're discussing.
The actual.
It's kind of it doesn't really pertain to like the action that we're going to take, but it's more of a curiosity kind of thing. So like
closer than
these,
mine.
you know, these standards with roads and bridges, how often are they kind of rejigged to accommodate climate change, for example?
Every year.
Every year.
That's why this comes before the board every year. So there's changes that can happen through the legislature with different acts. This started in the 1990s with FEMA, and then there's been several changes over time that upgrade. And right now, the big emphasis is on protecting our streams. So really, let me see, I'll tell you. Act 64 in 2001, 2002, that was a modification, and also the results of that was to look at the waterways and such. But also, the state offered another 10% in funding. So, and then Act 110, which is really to do with our streams. So that's the latest update. So each year, when there's legislative action, or the town may decide to change some of their standards, those would be compiled into the master document and come before the board.
Great, thanks.
We can exceed the state's minimum standards, but we have to certify that we're at least meeting.
Meeting the minimum. Yeah.
Steve, did you know that question was coming?
I anticipated there'd probably be some questions.
Well, I'm impressed either way. So.
He didn't anticipate the bridge question.
But he knew the answer.
Yeah, good. Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I make a motion to, well, is that how you say it? I move that we approve the annual certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards form for submittal to the Vermont Agency of Transportation.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the annual certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards form for submittal to the Vermont Agency of Transportation. And David, just making sure you don't have any comments or concerns. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you. And don't go anywhere, Steve.
Sit
while I
tight.
turn my page. We next have we want to hear about a roadway paving project, please.
Okay, so the next item we have is what we call the Spring Paving Award. Generally, what we'll do is we'll put a contract, you'll see another contract come before you in some time here that is for the seasonal summer paving. And then what we do is, because you never know how these bids are going to come out, we'll do an additional spring paving with the money that was left over from summer contract. And that's what this is. So we solicited bids for paving. Basin Brothers from Westminster had the low bid of $43,621. We also received a bid from Vermont Roadworks from Guilford. That was $47,179. And Johnson's Asphalt from Northfield, Mass. for $48,946. The paving projects that we're talking about are Cottage Street, Vine Street, Esty Street, Cottage to Pleasant, Cherry, and Cottage. So pretty much that Estyville area. If anybody travels Esty Hill, they're pretty aware that it's in poor shape. So that's what the spring paving will focus on, and we're requesting to accept the low bid for $43,621 from Basin Brothers.
Great. Anybody have any comments or questions?
I'd be prepared to make a motion.
I got comments and questions first.
Oh, sorry.
So
You had a good one last time. Don't
thanks.
mess it up.
Well, so I'm a curious person, so I drove these streets to check that they were indeed in poor shape and, Yes, they very much were. And I noticed that it was already kind of like work sort of started a little bit. So if we didn't approve this bid,
That work would have to be done anyways, but I really wouldn't expect that you would not accept these bids.
okay. Well, I
And
mean,
so
yeah.
it was a calculated risk on
Okay.
40 years of experience.
All right, good. Well, we could go rogue.
But what we were doing is, some of the things that we're doing would
Yeah.
need to be done anyways, and that is adjusting manhole covers or valve boxes, which normally we would at least begin that type of work.
Okay.
And
Didn't count on your eagle eye, Daniel.
one thing, actually, it's really good that it's come up, because one thing that's important to clarify out of that, so we wouldn't proceed with a contractor, other than in an extremely rare situation like the one where we came to you in advance and said, may we be authorized to award a bid and keep going. We just did that, but that's actually, I think, the only time I can remember doing that since I've been here. I mean, maybe one other time, it's very rare. What's less rare is what's happening right here, which is we do work in preparation for a contractor to come and do what they're gonna do. And in order to make sure that the timing of that lines up right, there are gonna be times when we send our own employees out to do that prep work before you've awarded a contract. But we would not engage the contractor to come and actually do work under the contract until you've approved it.
Great. And then, can I ask a follow-up?
Of course.
So one of the things that folks talk to me about are the condition of roads, and this is sort of a newbie question. So I see, these streets mentioned here, and then you kind of alluded to it here that there will be further paving work done as we move forward.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay. And that work is done based on your kind of assessment of the road condition over the last several.
We've actually compiled, we use a program from the University of New Hampshire, and what it does is you take all the roads and you go out and drive the roads,
Yeah.
and then it's based on things such as if you're going the speed limit, if it's 25 miles an hour, and you can maneuver that road fairly safely, and then the number of traffic, the number of vehicles. So certainly some of the main intersections through town are going to go higher in priority, and then some of these neighborhoods sometimes go down in priority. Just a couple of years ago, we were up in Washington Street area, and that probably hadn't been paved since the 1970s.
Yeah.
Low volume, less trucks, less impact. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at. We also look at our maintenance schedules to see how often we're going out there and making patches. So we take all that, bundle it all up, and then it comes down to the budget. And so our current budget at $300,000 enables us to go back to a road. Once we get done with SD, it'll be 39 years before we return. So it all comes down to the money.
That's what I was gonna say.
And it comes down to, also, we've gotten extra money from grants and such from the state, which helps boost that up and get those numbers down. So that's how we do it. There's always another road that needs to work, and so it's a real challenge.
Is the kind of like report that you create about the condition of roads publicly available?
We could supply that. We could supply our whole list.
Yeah.
The list is always bigger than the money to
Right.
fix them.
Well, yeah, and I don't want you to kind of take this
Yeah.
as me bashing Public Works for not fixing up all the roads.
Right.
It's more about making more visible how we kind of make decisions about which roads.
Right.
And then people could look up their road and get really depressed about it's
Right.
gonna be 39 years.
Right.
till they get
Well, then
to-
it changes. It's going to change every single year too.
Right,
There's
right.
a lot of elements or roads will all of a sudden, they'll go in disrepair, or you may have storms that affect roads.
Sure,
And the other thing is, sometimes we receive money from the state for Class 2 roads, so those will get ramped right up to the top. So it's pretty
Big
complicated.
water main break,
Water-
do
yeah.
damage to a road that makes it go to the top of the list.
So it is pretty complicated, but we'd love to get together with you if you'd like to take a deeper dive.
Sure. Thanks.
I have a question. So the prep work that was done by Public Works in anticipation of the contract was excluded from the contract?
Yes. The same funds, what happens is, again, there's a capital account that's approved for X number of dollars. And then the reason we come before you is because my authorization, the town manager, is up to 10,000. So this exceeds that. But there could be a project that's $5,000 or $7,000 where you may see a particular road or an entrance to a bridge that gets paved. That's all done internally, because you've already accepted the fact of, you know, a number for paving, and then it's gone to town meeting and it's been approved again. And then we normally, and always would come to you for anything over 10.
Thank you.
Yep.
Such good questions and answers. I'm loving it. Anybody want to make a motion? Move us along?
I'll make a motion. This one, right?
Yep.
Okay. I make a motion to award a bid in the amount of $43,621 to Bazin Brothers of Westminster, Vermont for 2019 spring paving.
Sorry, too many jokes in my head. I have a motion to award a bid in the amount of $43,621 to Bazin Brothers of Westminster, Vermont for 2019 spring paving. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's 4-0. When I first moved to Vermont, I learned that you have to say Westminster because I lived up in the hills in Putney. And I don't know why. Do you know why it's Westminster and not Westminster?
Well, see, I just always known it that way.
Yeah.
It's Westminster West and Westminster for the town.
That's true.
It is absolutely true. Anyway, just a little
Learn something new
little
every
side
day.
If you want to be a cool kid, a local cool kid. Westminster. And we have even more of Steve Barrett. We're going to talk about a dump truck.
Okay, so the next item is a dump truck. It's a 2009 that we're looking to replace. We opened bids on May 1st, and we received the following bids. One from Delury Sales and Service from North Hoosick, New York, with Viking equipment, $165,936. And the other one was also from Delury Sales, with a package from HP Fairfield for $167,136. So we're recommending the lower bid of $165,936. We're also recommending that we include the options that we included in this bid package was 5-year extended warranty for the transmission, a 72-month, 100,000 mile extended warranty, that's the vehicle, that's bumper to bumper, and also a 72-month, 150,000 extended warranty for the engine for $4,200. And if I didn't give you those numbers again, it's the 5-year extended warranty is $500, 72-month, 100,000 extended warranty for the vehicle is $3,500. The 72-month, 150,000 mile extended warranty for the engine is $4,200. What that does, the budget number for this is $170,000 that was approved in the budget. We're asking to take the remaining $4,200 out of our equipment maintenance budget for the warranties because we feel it's justified and it is good practice to have warranty on these vehicles that are treated pretty hard with plowing and mud season. We found that it's been a good idea to have these extended warranties.
They're really expensive.
They are, and you can tell that we got our service out of it because this vehicle that's worth almost $170,000, our 10-year-old is worth $18,500, and some of them we've had as low as $5,000 when we get done with them. So we've got our money's worth.
It's all part of our very well thought out plan.
It is.
Spending the money at appropriate times and using up our vehicles as much as possible.
And it enables us to block off sections of the town for street fairs too.
That's right.
It's really a wall.
How long is the lifespan of this dump truck?
The dump trucks are in the capital plan are 10 years. So this is the 10-year mark. After that, we find that we start to have some major problems on a vehicle that's like this vehicle's worth $18,500, and one breakdown can be $12,000.
Sure.
So you lose your money pretty quick, and that's happened to us a few times. So.
Do you have these extended warranties on other vehicles that you've
We do.
purchased recently?
Yep.
Have you had to use one of them?
We have. Quite
Has it
often.
been worth it?
So it definitely pays for itself because everything's so expensive now and
Yeah.
it's electronic and a lot of the work has to be done by the dealer. So it's just a good practice to have the warranties
Okay.
because we're keeping them so long.
Great. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I would move that we award the bid in the amount of $174,136 to Delury Sales and Service of North Hoosick, New York, for the purchase of a new dump truck with warranty.
Great. Dave has made a motion to award a bid in the amount of $174,136 to Delury Sales and Service of North Hoosick, New York, for the purchase of a dump truck and warranty. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that passes 4-0 as well. And last but not least, road culvert replacement project.
So we have a road culvert on Hinesburg Road, and it's just past, if you're going up Ames Hill and you take the sharp left onto Hinesburg Road, it's about 700 feet up south on that road. It's a large box culvert. These are concrete. It's similar to almost a bridge in size. And so we submitted bids, and we received a low bid from A.S. Clark in Dummerston, A.S. Clark and Sons, for a total amount of $58,800. We also received bids from Belco, who's from Brattleboro, at $62,000. M.A. Bean from Sanbornton, New Hampshire, $62,000. Bernie LaRock and Sons from Guilford, $76,500. Weaver Excavation Shaftesbury, $77,375. And Zaluzny Construction in Vernon for $104,800. The estimated budget for this particular project was $80,000, so it's under quite a bit from what we estimated. The $58,000 is to put the culvert in place. Extra work that will be done in this contract through Public Works will be the paving, and the guardrail will be subbed out to Lafayette. Those are smaller items, and they'll come to about $10,000, but that's separate from this bid item. Just so you know, the total project will be about $68,000, so it's still under the $80,000. And also, this work is being funded through a VTrans grant, structures grant, which will pay for 90% of it. So out of the total of the 68, the state will pay $61,200. So this is a good thing.
Definitely.
Great.
I like seeing all of that's multiple bids. We don't always
We're
see 6.
really happy
Yeah.
about that, and I think some of it was the clarity, the simplicity of the bid document, and the flexibility. And we worked with VTrans District 2 on this, and we looked at other bid packages. So we're really pleased to get that type of competition.
Yeah.
You always want to see that.
Happy to see Belco, maybe next time.
Yep.
Right?
Will they get the stairway?
It does also show something, sometimes when we only see, 2 or 3 bids and there's a wide variation, we struggle with, why would there be such a wide variation? And it's easier to see when there's 6 like this. We often give the answer, and I have a sense that sometimes it doesn't necessarily ring as perfectly valid to all of you. About there can really just depend on circumstances, who's busy and who's
People are
not,
busy,
right?
yeah.
Who's got a crew that they need to keep busy, even though they're maybe not going to make money on the job, that sort of thing. And when you see this many bids, it's easier to see that variation where, 3 of them were hungry, 2 were right about where we thought they'd be, and 1 is busy right now and doesn't really need the work, but would like the income if they got it.
Yeah, and also this particular project attracts more contractor because of the project itself. Some of the projects that we have are much more complicated. This one's fairly complicated, but all the engineering's been done, everything's right there, it's pretty straightforward. So it's attractive to a lot more contractors too.
And the best contractor name is Bernie LaRock. I just wanted to say that for some reason. That's my favorite local contractor name. Well, I'm sorry, it's a good name. That's a good name too, but Bernie LaRock just sounds like professional fighter or something.
These culverts are designed to cope with increased precipitation, increased extreme precipitation.
Yes, they're actually, what happens is we do an analysis of the water. And so culverts this is part of what the standards that you just passed, is that we have a responsibility each time a culvert is replaced to look at the watershed area and the impact on a peak storm. And that was done in this, and it's appropriate size for a large storm.
Does that include like the 500-year storm or the?
It's not 500, it's more like a.
100?
It's like a 25, they call it a 25, even FEMA does that, but then we look at 100 plus.
Okay.
There's also, you add such a factor on it because even when you do the analysis, it isn't perfect. So you also want to add a factor. And then it's not that much more money to increase it at the time. We also consulted with the state stream people, had them come in to ensure, if we need a permit or to also seek their advice. And so they approved this also, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for all of that. We have, we don't yet have a motion, do we?
No.
Did we do that yet?
I can rustle up a motion.
Thank you.
I move that we award a bid in an amount, we're on AS Clark, right? In an amount of $58,800 to AS Clark and Sons of Dummerston, Vermont for the Hinesburg Road Culvert Replacement Project.
Thank you. We have a motion to award a bid in the amount of $58,800 to A.S. Clark and Sons of Dummerston for the Hinesburg Road Culvert Replacement Project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
4-0. Thank you, Steve.
Don't forget to sign those things,
My
my colleagues.
Thank you. It's held up right here. I'm doing a lot of talking. Can't do two things. Thanks for the reminder, though.
I got another one right there.
Okay, good. Bring it. Merciless. Next on our agenda is ordinance amendments. And let me just turn my page. Do we have to do a special thing before this?
Read it.
The public hearing comes 2 weeks from tonight.
Gotcha.
Tonight, it's a first reading and some consideration so that the public knows what you're considering changing in the ordinance.
Great. So these are two ordinances that were recommended by the Traffic Safety Committee, and I'll let you speak to them.
Sure.
Thank you.
So there are two very different items. The Locust Street is a safety matter where we're recommending that what is already no parking on the east side of Locust Street between Maple and Vine be extended to include the east side of Locust Street from Vine to Chestnut. It's a small 2-block street. And there's visibility issues at the intersection of Locust and Chestnut that will be remedied by this no parking. I've been asked in the preparation for tonight about the fact that there's some multifamily housing in the area and probably a little more than usual demand for some on-street parking there. We believe that what's available on Vine and on Chestnut is sufficient, and there's also parking allowed on the west side of Locust. So we think there is sufficient on-street parking and that the safety concern for this one little block outweighs the usefulness of those on-street spaces. When staff presented this, it was actually a request that came from residents in that neighborhood who were concerned about the visibility issues at that intersection. It was then inspected by staff. Staff recommended to the Traffic Safety Committee that we do this. The Traffic Safety Committee unanimously agreed, and so now it's before you for action. The same sequence of events is true of the handicap space on Main Street, but for a very different reason. This is to provide better accessibility. For folks who have mobility issues, the east side of Main Street has been a pretty difficult place to get to. And so while there are handicap accessible spaces in the Harmony lot and
The Grove Street lot.
primarily that, yeah, well, High Grove, yes, although then you're up on a hill too, which has issues. So the main issue here is that we were asked to look specifically at on-street for the east side of Main Street to see if it was possible to provide such a space. And Patrick went out with Rob and Scudder to view the area and see what would be appropriate. And in fact, there's a perfect space. We, having identified it, wish we had done this previously because it's so clearly the right place to provide designated handicap parking on the east side, which is, there's a photograph of it in the backup materials that shows there's a spot that because of a fire hydrant that's near that street clock, and then because of the entrance into the alley that's on the north side of that space, there's a parking space that already and for years has been hashed as no parking both behind it and in front of it, which gives some extra maneuverability there. And so that's the space that we're recommending be converted to handicap parking with a sign to restrict it for that purpose. We'll remove the parking meter at that location, and it will improve the accessibility of our downtown.
And now, it's not a truly ADA compliant space because of the width issue, correct?
I would use a different modifier there. I'd say it is not a fully compliant space. It is actually proper to sign a space of this width. The issue here is width. And it's proper to sign a space of this width for restricted use for handicap placard holders only. But there'll be, in the signage, it'll be made clear that it's not van accessible. For van accessibility, you need more width because of the lift. That's part of that function.
Great. Well, I think it's very needed, and it was satisfying to sit on the Traffic Safety Committee and get something done and move it towards us. So this is just a first reading, but would anybody like to comment on either of those proposed ordinance amendments? If you may, or we could bring it to you if needed. It's a little high.
That's good.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say, thank the town for working with the ADA committee, which I'm not a member of, but I go to meetings. And the person who's the town liaison left about a year ago. And recently, although that position I don't think is filled, or maybe it is as of this week, recently Patrick Moreland started coming to the meetings, and he was very helpful and supportive and got us to the traffic committee and listened to what we had to say. And Tim, you posted on Facebook, and there were some responses, most of which were, 1, can't we have 3? Can't we have 5? Can we have them at the library? There were some concerns about not being a cutout there to get a wheelchair up. Because of the fire hydrant, anyone who can get their wheelchair out of the back by themselves can get the chair out, or if they have someone with them, they can get the chair out, which usually means that person can get the chair up over the curb. But if they can't, because of the alley, there is a cutout. And someone expressed concern about the light being there, that would make it difficult. But in fact, the light is another plus. If any of you who are mobility abled have ever gotten out of your car on Main Street during rush hour and plastered yourself against the car and shut the door really fast so no one hits it, you are at the front of that line of traffic that stops at the light. And when everyone stops is a great time to get out of the car.
Yeah.
So I would just like to thank the town for the support. It's a really good start. And FYI, there's a space almost exactly like it on the west side of Main Street by the bike ramp and the bank. So we look forward to further advocacy, because there are more than 1,500 people in Brattleboro with a handicap tag. And that's not counting the surrounding towns, which add another 1,000. And while I'm incredibly happy that we get this space, because I assume you'll improve it, it's the thing to do, I'll probably never be able to park in it because it'll be full all the time. But that's great because it will show that we need it. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, I think it's a really good start. We have obviously a town that was built a long time ago. I'm stumped on that one, but it's difficult just making everything accessible to all people, but we're taking good steps, and I guess I'm moving the needle on what we should do in the
Might be a
future.
good time to mention the handicap parkers can park for free.
Yes, certainly. I try to remind people of this online once in a while, but in Brattleboro, anyone with a handicap placard can park at any spot without paying.
Correct.
And without time restriction, even more important. So that's a good thing to know. And the east was very important in our mind too, at least to start with, because the west has more options in the back where you can have handicap, where we do have handicap spots in the Harmony lot, for instance, and such. So without any other public comment, without any other comment from the board, we can just move along, because this was just the first reading. Correct.
Well, wait now.
I was.
Yeah.
That was where you wanted to.
Yeah, no. So this request came through the Traffic Safety Committee, right?
Yes. And ADA.
And the ADA Committee. Are those the appropriate avenues for people to make? I don't mean, I don't think those are.
Yes.
I'm asking, like, on the behalf of people at home, is that what they should do if they have comments on parking, or
Yes.
should they come here first?
Yes, and I have a further comment on that if you want. There is a form online, and I think it's on the front page. If you go to the bottom right, there's a citizen request safety action form, and that comes directly to the Traffic Safety Committee.
Yeah, it actually comes initially to staff, so we receive it in our office and it goes to Public Works and Planning simultaneously, and then together we all take a look at whatever it is that's being suggested. And sometimes it's as simple as addressing something in the field, like a sign is obscured by a tree or something, and so we just deal with it. Sometimes it needs regulatory action, and if it's something that will need select board approval, ultimately, we always go to the Traffic Safety Committee with it first, so that you have not only staff's recommendation, but also the Traffic Safety Committee's recommendation. Okay. This particular one represents something just a little different than that. Robin spoke to the coordination between the ADA Committee and the town staff, and there's actually a number of different issues that we're discussing right now, looking at ways in which we might be able to be helpful to address concerns of the ADA Committee, and some of those might end up coming up to the Select Board, likely passing through traffic safety on the way.
Okay. And so, this is one space for an entire town on Main Street. And so what is stopping us having a second space, perhaps on the western side?
I can speak to that. There's nothing stopping us. What has the counterbalancing consideration up until now, and perhaps that'll change as we look again at that spot by the bank. What made this different from past requests was the east side and the clarity of, this is just so sensible to use that opportunity at that space, which has more room around it. On the west side, the counterbalancing consideration has been the fact that a person with a placard can use any legal parking space and doesn't have to pay the meter, and that there's high competition for Main Street parking spaces. So there are some designated spaces for people with placards to park in the two parking lots that we've already mentioned, and at the transportation center. We recognize the transportation center is pretty distant from some of these businesses, but the Harmony lot is closer. And so in just balancing all of this, on the west side of Main Street up until now, we haven't recommended a handicap-specific parking space because of the fact that folks with a placard can use the other spaces, and because those spaces are almost always filled.
Okay. I think I was moving towards being done with the conversation. Is everyone else satisfied? Great, so we don't have to take an action because this was the first reading, and we're required to do further readings before we do take an action. So, next we have a dry hydrant grant on Bonnyvale Road to discuss, and I'm sure Peter will inform us what a dry hydrant is.
Well,
because we always ask that question.
Sure. So a dry hydrant is a hydrant that is not connected to the town's pressurized potable water system, but is instead connected to another source from which the fire department can draw water when it's fighting a fire in a more rural area that isn't served by our town water system. In this case, it's a pond that is privately owned at 641, 643 Bonnyvale Road, where the owners offered to partner with the town to create this dry hydrant there that would better protect their property and the properties in that neighboring area. We came to you a few months back asking for permission to apply for this grant, and you approved that. We applied for it. We are now have been advised that we're receiving it. We're asking that you accept and appropriate the grant so that the fire department can move ahead with the installation of the dry hydrant.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or comments? How about a motion?
I move that we accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $5,000 from the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts for a dry hydrant to be installed at 641 and 643 Bonnyvale Road.
We have a motion to accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $5,000 from the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts for a dry hydrant to be installed at 641, 643 Bonnyvale Road. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I'll say.
All those opposed? None? And that's 4-0 in favor. Thank you. Next, we have a grant application, U.S. Department of Justice.
Yes, this is for bulletproof vests. It's a recurring grant. We have always in the capital fund each year replacement of some of the vests so that over a period of years they all get updated. And almost every year there is some federal money available to put towards the replacement of vests. This year, the amount that we've been advised we would be eligible to receive is $2,900 through this particular grant program. So we're asking for your authorization that we apply for that money. It's pretty automatic, these ones that recur like this. So we would expect to be back before you sometime in the months ahead with the accept and appropriate phase of this grant.
How many vests do you get for $2,900?
Not a lot of vests. Doesn't say in the backup, I apologize. Let me see if it says in the form. We can get you that information. I don't have it in front of me tonight. But these are expensive. These are sophisticated.
They do the trick.
They do the trick. They provide the protection they're intended to provide, and they're not inexpensive items.
Mm-hmm.
We'll send you an email to advise you of the price.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments, questions? And a motion?
I move that we authorize the Brattleboro Police Department to submit a grant application in the amount of $2,900 to the U.S. Department of Justice for new bulletproof vests.
Thank you. We have a motion to authorize the Brattleboro Police Department to submit a grant application in the amount of $2,900 to the U.S. Department of Justice for a new bulletproof vests. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed, so that's 4-0. Jan, thank you. Next up, we are going to be discussing transportation center improvements.
We're happy to report that the bidding came in very favorably for the installation of the new lighting, the additional lighting there, and for the replacement of 2 flights of stairs. We actually had anticipated doing the lighting and only 1 flight of stairs this year, but the bidding was competitive enough that we're able to afford to do 2 of the flights that need to be replaced. So that's important because a portion of that west stairwell has actually been closed for the last several months. So we're doing more than we had expected to do with the stairs, and we're doing everything that had been previously approved by the select board in terms of additional lighting. The costs for those are $68,000 for the replacement of the 3rd and 4th floor stairs on the west side of the transportation center, and $19,300 for the additional LED lighting throughout the transportation center. And we recommend that you award those bids.
Great. Any discussion? And this came out of a fairly extensive conversation we had last year.
I'd say very extensive, yeah. For the lighting portion, the stairs are just a necessary replacement of worn-out infrastructure, but the additional lighting came out of a extended multi-meeting communication or conversation that went on between members of the community and the select board at the time.
And how old is the transportation center?
Coming up on 20, I don't think it's quite 20 yet.
I think it's more like 15. I think it was 2004.
Okay.
And is there a particular reason why the stairs
Yes.
have gone above?
Yes. In the course of the construction of the facility, some changes were made to make it less costly. One of which was to remove, the stairs were to have been interior stairwells. And the exterior of those portions of the building was removed from the project, but the materials used for the construction of the stairs was not modified.
Change. So will the new stairs be of a modified
They're
material?
exterior stairs. They're
Excellent.
meant to hold up to the weather.
Great.
I whipped around it. David, were you on the board at that time?
04? No.
So no, the joke is no one here made that decision, but.
Yeah. How,
It's no joke.
what's the lifetime on these stairs?
Patrick?
We'll see.
You know, I don't know the lifetime on the stairs. They're hot dip. I think it's called hot dipped galvanized, which is a sort of coating that you put on metal that's to be outside. And so I would expect a good deal of life from these as opposed to the stairs that they're replacing.
Great.
While neither of us is expert in these matters, I think we could confidently represent that they'll last much longer than 15. How much longer, I don't know, but it's not 17 years.
Great. So everyone tread lightly. We'll keep them going.
Well, I went for a stroll up the stairs on, I guess, what must have been the other side. I was like, oh, these stairs are fine. Why are we replacing these stairs? And then I remembered that there was the other stairwell that's being closed. I was like, oh, yeah, obviously.
And actually, we did just replace within the last 3 years the ones that you came up and found to be in good
Well, they
repair.
were
For the
fine,
same
so
reason.
yeah.
For the same reason.
With the same material.
That's the coating. You notice the sort of silvery color of them. That's the same coating that's going to be applied to the ones on the west.
Okay.
So we can see the difference by using the new stairs.
Absolutely. The ones on the west are presently this sort of bright silver galvanized. The ones on the the ones on the east are that way. The ones on the west are currently bright red and rusty.
And the lighting was super contentious. The board in its last incarnation authorized it. I wasn't really in favor of it. Just put that out there.
I don't think I was either.
No. I noticed that it's a lot less money than they thought they were going to have to spend on it, which is good, thanks to Doug Cleveland.
Is that because it's a LED? And LEDs
No,
are
it's
cheaper?
because we got really favorable bidding. So it was expected to cost almost twice.
Okay.
And I would
I think we had
assume-
estimated $35,000.
I would assume this lighting is a public safety issue.
It was
That
a
was the
result
argument.
of the extended discussion with the community about the degree to which some people feel unsafe in the facility. And so this was a action authorized by the board to
Remedy that perception.
brighten up the place. Yeah.
And it's going to add to the energy costs for the town.
It will.
Right? Do we have a sense of that?
Aren't we switching out the fixtures?
Well, I mean, they're LED.
They're already
They're LED lights, so they're as cost effective as
Right.
additional lighting can be, but it's additional lighting, so there will be additional costs. I don't know if we have a
I don't
estimated
have a
annual.
clear sense. They're LED lights, there's existing LED lights. This is going to be about 33% more LED lights than are there presently. The way the place is lit in the current plan, there are 2 rows that go down each floor. And this would add a 3rd row, so.
In the middle?
Yep. Maybe once they get installed, maybe we could have some sort of like public event there, like a party or something, to make the transportation center an enjoyable place for folks to be. My running group sometimes runs up and down it in the wintertime.
Really?
Sorry.
Stephanie, would you like to say anything about what might happen in the transportation center? I recall some comments.
I remember
We
you
did
were
kind of
gonna
talk
be
a little
with
bit
us.
about this.
Yeah,
Stephanie Bonin.
Stephanie Bonin, Executive Director of Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, and we are thrilled to report that we just got awarded an AARP grant working with a very large coalition to do a placemaking activity in the alley between Experience Goods and VCP. With the idea being for the community to embody the space in a very different way and access the lower part of the stairs into the transportation garage as it was built to be accessible for people to get their cars that way.
Well,
And
maybe
that's-
Daniel would like to have a presentation of the physical education elements of the new stairway.
We running up and down the stairs?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm good. No, we run up and down the bits where the cars go. Yeah.
That's also a good place to view our silo for the, what do you call it?
Very
The
good,
wood
which
pellet. The wood
people
pellet.
don't
Yes.
necessarily go
I
in
know.
that area and see that amazing thing. So that's part of the event that will happen the first Friday of September.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you had a picture of that silo.
I did.
didn't know what it was.
I know.
Yeah.
I should have labeled it, but it didn't allow me to label it or something. I wanted to pique everyone's interest. So it looks like we could make a motion, should it please the board, unless there's any other comments.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to award a bid in the amount of $19,300 to Cleveland Electric for additional LED lighting at the Brattleboro Transportation Center.
Okay, do we take both, or, no? I have a motion to award a bid in the amount of $19,300 to Cleveland Electric for additional LED lighting at the Brattleboro Transportation Center. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Might there be any other bids floating about?
I move that we award a bid in the amount of $68,000 to Belco for replacement of the 3rd and 4th floor stairs at the Brattleboro Transportation Center.
Thank you. We have a bid in the amount of $68,000 to Belco for replacement of the 3rd and 4th floor stairs at the Brattleboro Transportation Center. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's 4-0. Thank you. Next, we are going to be talking about an update. I think Patrick's going to help us out, right?
Sure.
Regarding broadband legislation and potential grants concerning broadband possibilities or expansion here in Brattleboro.
Sure. So, as you'll recall from a conversation the board had recently, just within the last few meetings, in follow-up from a representative town meeting, there was a discussion and staff was asked to explore opportunities that the state is considering for expanding broadband availability in Vermont, and what, if any, likelihood was the town of Brattleboro to be the beneficiary of some of this. I think it's important to point out that the bill is still in process. It I believe is sitting in a Senate Finance Committee at the moment. But assuming it gets passed by both the House and Senate and then gets signed by the governor, the bill would do a number of things. I've included for your consideration a section-by-section summary provided by Legislative Counsel, and then took the liberty of incorporating into my memo a little bit of staff's sense as to the degree to which each component would either be of benefit to Brattleboro or not so much. Before I get started in just sort of talking through some of the various components, we took the time to take a look at what the Vermont Department of, I think it's Public Service, has for connectivity levels across Brattleboro. And Brattleboro is, by Vermont standards, pretty well connected. By global standards, not so much, and perhaps by individual standards, not very well at all. But by general Vermont standards, Brattleboro is doing quite well in that approximately 95% of households have access to the FCC minimum standard of 25 megs down and 3 megs up. There is a certain 1.3% that has access to no more than 10 down and 1 up, and a couple that have access to just 4 down and 1 up. And then a very, very scant few of 32 locations that are presently unserved. And that's important to keep in mind as you sort of look through some of the programs that would be funded by this legislation, because they're primarily directed towards unserved or underserved locations. And just in terms of understanding what the state of Vermont determines to be underserved or unserved. Unserved means you have no access to broadband whatsoever, and underserved means you don't have more than 4.1. So as you can see from the statistics here, Brattleboro is considered largely served. The legislation would provide a substantial amount of resources for a variety of existing or newly established programs, one of which, in fact, the first of which listed in my cover memo, may be relevant to Brattleboro. That is what's called a Rural Broadband Technical Assistance Specialist. And this is an earmark of $120,000 that would be provided to the Vermont Department of Public Service to hire a technical assistant, somebody that municipalities across Vermont could rely upon to help guide them in making choices about either going after some of these grant programs or potentially taking on a program of their own and making some local investment in, for example, like a municipal fiber plant. That's something that staff is going to be bringing back to the board a response to probably in June, and talking about some of the options that may lie for us in the future. Those would in some way be benefited by having access to a state technical assistant who could help us to understand the road ahead. There are a couple other loan programs, the Broadband Expansion Loan Program and the Innovation Grant Program and the Connectivity Initiative, all of which appear to be directed towards underserved and unserved communities. So to the extent that they're good, they are good, they largely wouldn't be a significant source of financial assistance to Brattleboro. There are a couple of feasibility studies that this legislation would fund, either of which could potentially be of use to Brattleboro. One is to examine the feasibility of electric utilities delivering broadband service across the copper wires that deliver electricity to people's homes. And so that's going to be due to the legislature January 1 of 2020. And I think we can all look forward to seeing if there's some feasibility there. Another element is the potential for using general obligation bonds as a vehicle for municipalities to invest in infrastructure. Presently, state statute requires that only revenue bonds be used. There are some communities, particularly to the south of us in Massachusetts, that have utilized general obligation bonding. That has provided them with some potential advantages that perhaps municipalities in Vermont might wish to take advantage of, but I think the legislature is asking for bond counsel and the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank to weigh in on this before they make a determination about that. There would also be some regulatory changes about making it easier and defining the process and simplifying the process for adding technology to the poles. So if Brattleboro, for example, wanted to build a municipal fiber plant, we would need to negotiate with the pole owners for how to get our fiber onto these poles. That process can be cumbersome and expensive, and this legislation seeks to streamline that and make it a little easier. There is also an additional provision that allows municipalities to partner with private entities such that an ISP would have access to municipal revenue bonds for construction projects in a given municipality's community. I think that's something that may be of value to Brattleboro, depending upon how, what, if anything, we choose to do at a later date towards expanding service in this community. And then there are a couple of programs here, the High Cost Program and the Think Vermont Innovation Grant Program, which Brattleboro is just altogether excluded from. These are programs that have been existing for some time, commitments that the state has made for some time to individual, very rural communities. And this is the place where they've recently proposed to provide funding in order to make those projects happen. And Brattleboro isn't on any of those lists. So I think, like all things, it's legislation, it's fluid, it could change. It may or may not pass. If it does, I think there are some elements to this legislation which could, in the end, be of benefit to Brattleboro. And I just want to say I'm looking forward to, and I think we're anticipating possibly in June or a little later this summer, kind of coming back to the board and responding to the request that we examine municipal broadband options and talk a little about what those might look like in Brattleboro.
Great. I think this is great work, so thank you. I think we're all interested in hearing that further report as well. Anyone else? Anyone have a comment?
There's a couple of things. I think the polls and the partners and the access to bonds and the technical assistance are really crucial. I just started learning about this a few months ago, really like digging in. And one of the biggest, these are the three things that they mentioned that were the biggest obstacles that they're really, like Comcast and Verizon put in the way of municipalities when they were trying to do something locally to get a better service. And so I was really pleased to see that in the bill. And today the Finance Committee added or amended or has announced that they're going to amend the bill so that the 5G issue, which a lot of people are concerned about, and for good reason, there's really no definitive research yet that either proves or disproves the potential damage to us of that level of microwave interaction. But there has to be a box every 500 feet or something. So it's going to be a significant change. And rather than kill the whole bill because of that concern, they're going to require that any part of the funding that would be used for that would have to go through the Act 250, and I can't remember the other process, development process. So it'll be a longer process for that. So I think it's likely to pass, which should be really good. And so you're going to could you say a little bit more about what you anticipate bringing on in June?
Sure. So since the board sort of made that request, staff has been meeting with communities in the area, both in Massachusetts and Vermont, and finding a little bit about how they did what they did, why they did what they did.
Communities that have installed fiber throughout the town?
Yep.
Great.
So how and why and how do they feel about it now that they've done it? And I think there's an interesting conversation about, priorities. What is it we hope to achieve and what is it we're willing to sacrifice as a community to achieve it? that I think we'll all enjoy.
Great. I will share some information that I found with you that I think you'll
Great.
enjoy.
Great.
Anybody else? Really? Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I sort of expected more commentary, so I'm thrown off. Where are we at?
Goal
Okay.
setting.
See, when the staff is so confident that they're like a month
I know,
ahead of you,
I know.
It's sort of like,
Thank
okay,
you.
well, just shut up, what's next?
If I had to make a comment, I would thank Patrick for the information.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Okay. No, my mind's going elsewhere. It's okay. Go ahead, Peter. Thank you.
So your next item is consideration of the annual goal setting process. And we always provide an update on the status of the implementation of the comprehensive review of town operations as sort of baseline to kind of see how we're doing in our longer term objectives. And provide you last year's list of goals updated with anything since January that reflects actions, how well we did at implementing those goals. That's meant to be just background information for you. The meat and potatoes of this item is your discussion that you'll have here in a few minutes regarding the proposed list of goals for 2019-2020. I will say that we prepare for you each year a draft list of goals that's prepared by staff, sometimes including items that we think you should consider establishing as top priority goals for the year. Mostly, though, reflecting what we know to have been things that you as a board have already been considering, or in some cases, things the prior board was talking about. We really need to get to working on X or Y. And so it's meant to be a starting place. We explicitly put it on with the idea that this probably is going to take a couple of discussions for you. I would say especially this year, since there's 4 of you here tonight. Setting the goals for the year is something that is better done when there's a full 5-member board present. But tonight would be the night to either tell us that some things on that list really don't look like they rise to the level of being among the top priority goals for the year, or for you to do some modifying of what's there. I know from email communication that a couple of you have suggestions of things you'd like to add, which is altogether appropriate. So with that as sort of setting the scene, the one thing I'd like to say about the comprehensive review of town operations as part of the background to this, and then I'm going to sit back and be quiet unless you need me to clarify anything as you have your discussion about goals, is that we've made really good progress on implementing most of the items we identified in the comprehensive review of town operations, and actually, particularly in this past year, better progress than I even dared to predict on some of the larger goals. I think I'm really pleased with both the work that the staff has done around some of these heavier lifts, particularly related to the capital improvement planning, but not solely related to that, as well as things that we've tackled together at the policy level where we've provided information and the select board has moved things forward. So I think, collectively as a team, we're doing the work that needs to be done to take a long-term view and still be addressing the more immediate things as they arise. But we're making steady progress on the long term. And the way that that's best reflected statistically is that we had 10 items this year out of an original total of about 57 items that were identified for action over the course of this planning period. 10 this year moved from the in progress status to accomplished. And then we had, additional measures of progress in smaller numbers from other categories just moving towards completion. So I don't want to really dwell on anything more there because that's more of kind of just measuring our continued steps forward rather than really focusing on the work for the year ahead. But I would say that now that we provided 4 updates to the comprehensive review, as a staff, we feel as though this first go-round has served its purpose. We feel like additional updates is just going to take a few more items from things we're working on to things we've done, but the list of things we've done gets kind of stale, other than as a satisfaction of being able to look at, we've been working on quite a lot, and we've been covering good ground and improving the community because of it. So the document will stay, available for people to see that progress got made. But we think for this process, this part of the planning process to be valuable going forward, it'll be important for us to create a new comprehensive review of town operations next year. We'll take a deeper look again at ourselves and at the things that we think that are needed in the community in the next 3 and 5 and 10 years, and produce a 2020 document that is actually, a forward-looking document rather than a measure of how we've been doing. And we'll bring that to you for your review and our collaboration together before that becomes a final document about a year from now. But for tonight, I think this is a good time for me to be quiet and for you as the board to have the discussion you need to have about the proposed goals for this year.
Thank you. I'm also going to attempt to be quiet. It's because I'm chair, so I'm going to try to take a back seat. But I just wanted to say that when I first decided to run for select board 2 years ago, it was probably the CRTO was one of the most important documents that got me excited about the possibility of being involved and being part of helping Brattleboro. So it's great. And I'm glad we're going to
And then you saw the long-term financial plan.
Lost. That's more
Nerd alert.
That's bedtime. Bedtime reading. The LTFP, right? So I'm going to kick it out to my fellow members for their comments on our proposed 2019. Oh, I do want to say one thing, and we can discuss how to handle it, but as is obvious, Brandy's not here, and I know that she has a very intense desire to be in on the conversation. So I'm not sure if you guys want to handle it as sort of a light Passover tonight, and then allow Brandy to be able to join us at a subsequent meeting.
I think
sounds
that's a really good
reasonable.
idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I know there's
So we
some-
can have a discussion and then we can continue the discussion in 2 weeks.
Exactly, and even modify a little.
Can whet people's appetites.
Exactly. WHET. Right?
That's right. Great. So I really appreciate all the work that went into crafting these goals. It's pretty evident the range of things that the town does. And it's also pretty evident to me as a person in the town, and like we all are, that we have a crisis on our hands around opioids and overdoses, and I've crafted something to include in our goals that relates to that, which I emailed you all and which I will read now, I guess, for the public. So I wanted to add this in, and if it had to have a heading, just so folks at home know, each of these goals has a heading: governance, diversity, housing, etc., etc. So I would put this under a heading of public health, which we do not currently have in there. And my goal is as follows: better understand the impact of the opioid epidemic and overdose crisis on the town of Brattleboro through collaboration, reporting, and information sharing. So that's the goal. And then I made a little suggestion on how we might do that. So town departments and designated stakeholders can collaborate with impacted individuals, organizations, and agencies to produce a monthly report which describes impacts, highlights needs, and proposes solutions. So I would like to add that to our list of goals.
I would recommend it go under sustainability. Well, primarily because we're taking a much broader look at what that means. It's not just about energy and resources.
So when I thought about this, I've had conversations with the library, with both police and fire, and this crisis impacts all areas of the town, both small t and big T. And so kind of putting it within something like sustainability I think maybe kind of puts it in too small a place. I mean, I know that sustainability can be thought of very largely, but, you know, this is a public health crisis.
Matt?
Oh, certainly.
Well, I really like this, and I consider it a public health element as well. I really like Daniel's goal, and I have a corollary goal that I'd also like to introduce. It's related, that to educate the public about the collaborative effort that is Project CARE, with a town-wide mailing of the existing Project CARE brochure, so that a greater understanding of the issue and what Brattleboro is doing about this issue can be known to all. And I know that I've seen this Project CARE brochure only because I asked. And that, you know, I think the town should be wallpapered in it, because people ask questions. They ask questions about, you know, this crisis and what's going on, and more specifically, what is Brattleboro doing about it? And I think that this collaborative effort that is going on is a really positive endeavor that everyone should know. And the brochure not only talks about the crisis, but also tells the average resident of Brattleboro suggested measures for what they can do, and what all the resources are for people who are suffering from opioid dependency. So this exists, and I think it should be disseminated to the public.
Well, when CARE, Project CARE was first proposed and implemented, and largely Chief Fitzgerald came before us, there was quite a bit of discussion. I agree that there isn't sort of a central spot that describes it, but to some extent I think it's because it's been evolving. It's still relatively new, and Brandy and I actually were just discussing this about a week ago. It's underfunded. I mean, it really needs more funding, so that's a conversation that has to happen, how we can bring together funding sources for something like that.
And do you think public awareness would increase the likelihood that the priority for funding would increase?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. Could be, yeah. I think, well, if you don't mind, there's sort of a larger conversation about appropriate role of municipal government, and whether we can be tasked with the reason we're discussing goals here. So I don't really understand what the goal would be that we could actually check off. Traditionally in our goals, we have things that we can actually know that we can do. But certainly if we say something like education and coordination between helpful agencies that are already out there, I could see that as a goal, but I think the wording has to be very careful. And one thing that alarms me about Daniel's is the monthly report. I might push back against that a little bit, because we have town staff that is very occupied with many other things. So I'm not sure if that's a bar that can be kept. And it feels like if it was monthly, it would be something that would be just regurgitated over and over again, because we have challenges that come to us in Brattleboro from all over. I mean, it's a national challenge right now, and it's growing. My recent meeting with Christina Nolan, U.S. Attorney, and you were at that press conference. It's sobering what everyone in the United States and across the world is dealing with right now, with not only opioids, but the new and upcoming methamphetamines issue. So I see something that I want to have a goal that's doable for a tiny town like ours with tiny resources, but with a lot of heart and a lot of talent. So these are, I'm trying to keep my comments kind of general. So I don't want to attack.
I mean, we could get into it.
Well, because let's be frank. If anybody on this board has more experience, it's Brandy. Right now, what she's inside is this world that partially deals with people who are struggling with dependency of different types. Not only that, but housing and lots of different, and public health, as you mentioned. So I really want to have her involved in the conversation. So that's.
And have you all seen the brochure that the town
I
has
think I
on
saw it
Project
a
Care?
long time ago.
It might be good for us all to refresh our memory
Mhm.
on what that says, and we can look at the relevancy of having, a public education element to this public health crisis.
I think we're going to talk about Daniel's offering, so I think finding out, sort of putting bones on it, or whatever the right way, whatever that is, what that's actually going to look like, I think we'll probably find that that what you're looking at and what we would support is going to fit into other things that we're doing anyway. But I wouldn't assume that it's more than we can handle, or be too concerned about it until we really what's it going to look like. But I think with this, Liz, with yours, we could just ask Tim and Brandy to put this on our agenda next week as an action item and just do it. I don't know that it's.
It seems
It's
simple
an
to me,
action,
but I'm
yeah.
bringing it up to the board
Yeah.
and to Peter to see, it's how it can be established. And I would imagine that Peter could also report to us at the next meeting about how Daniel's element could be reported on.
Sure. I think the distribution of the brochure is as simple as us giving you a price of what it would cost to mail it to every household in town, in business. So all the different mailing addresses in town, and it's a few $1,000s. We can get the firm, clear figure, and you can decide whether you just want to do that. On the particular wording, I want to say that I can speak for the staff already to say that we think that adding something to this list that is specific to the opioid crisis is an important thing to do. We think that's good. We're glad that you brought that up. I haven't had an opportunity to review with staff the specific wording, but I would have an opportunity to do that tomorrow, and we could provide some feedback prior to your additional consideration of this 2 weeks from now. And particularly to the timing question that has had a little bit of discussion already this evening is, it may be that staff says, wow, this is just right, but could we do it quarterly? Or maybe it really needs to be monthly because stuff is changing so fast out there. I don't know, but we'll have that conversation. We'll provide some input into that discussion that you'll have.
Right. I mean, in part, what I was trying to do here was start a conversation about what we might be able to do as a board, right? So understanding that the municipality of Brattleboro is not about to solve this very large problem, but that we also do have a responsibility to the people of Brattleboro to share information that we have in a way that is clear and that holds us accountable, and it enables us to track trends and to maybe look at, I think when you put it all in one place, you can see it a little more clearly. So in the monthly reports that department heads provide, you can find data and you can stick it all together. But I would like the public to have a clearer sense of what this crisis looks like in our town and what our response to it is. And I think that it's not a question of saying each month we're not doing enough, until nobody is dying on our streets, we're not doing enough. But we need to at least have a kind of clear-eyed view of what is happening and start to have departments and other agencies and organizations weigh in on solutions and try and find the solutions that fit the size of the place that we are with the budget that we have.
Yeah, and I mean, just to throw one name out, Chad Simmons was just here with
Right.
the project.
COSU.
And they're deep into a lot of data and a lot of proposed solutions. And so we should always remember we're not operating in a vacuum.
Right, right.
There's so many good people out there working on this stuff.
Right.
Chloe today for the childcare issue, you know.
Right, and I look at Stephanie and, you know, think that the DBA would have a part to play in this conversation.
Or
right?
they're, you know, they have
You know?
real effects down
Yeah.
there, downtown, every day.
Yeah, and again, the brochure addresses that as well, and I think that's really helpful. And our constituents are constantly questioning what's going on and what to do, what they can do.
What's going on? You hear that a lot.
Am I allowed to ask a question in this?
Oh, certainly. These are our goals, but we try to be very responsive to
Okay.
constituents. And
Stephanie Bonin, Executive Director of DBA. My question is, if you put it under sustainability, would it then be able to be the work to be funded by the sustainability officer? Or is it not connected because it's just your goals?
Could there be staff support to help coordinate efforts? I
That's
think
what I'm asking.
that's
Is
when
that
we
a
talk about that,
perk to
that's
putting
why I
it
put
under
the word there.
sustainability?
But we
Well,
don't,
there's public health officials, are there not? In the town? Or is that state?
Well, public health is more of a state function. The way we overlap with that is through the inspections that we do, that we're about to expand.
But whatever reporting that this might suggest would most likely be a police matter, would it not?
I think the point folks on the town staff for this, it definitely, as Daniel pointed out, you know, it cuts across multiple different departments of the town. But I think because of Project Care, because of the coordination that's already going on with other partners in the community, that it's likely that the police department would take the lead for us in organizing this collaborative report and, you know, in whatever form it might ultimately take in terms of sort of guiding action and reporting back for accountability. I think PD would be who we would look to be in the lead on that.
And when there's an incident or an event or something, they have that information, so that would be like if rescue is called to something.
Oh, yeah.
then-
Well, and between them and the fire department, and so, you know, a fair amount of this data already exists
Right.
and is being reported, but it's not at all being coordinated as
Or disseminated.
You know, this is what's happening around opioids.
Right, and there's little narrative perhaps around trends or concerns or, you know, I mean, talking with the library, I know that they have concerns about some of the library users, some of the facilities, and those concerns just kind of like live on Star's shoulders and are not out in the world. And I think that if we had, I mean, I don't know what happens at department head meetings, whether
Right.
that stuff gets talked about, but
It
I would
does.
like it to be much more visible so
Yeah.
that as a community we can talk about it, because it's a community-wide concern.
I think that's a really good point, and I would like to underscore that, you know, we're well aware that this does cut across departments, particularly when you get outside of police and fire, where it's a, you know, daily experience. The place where it's most visible and for us is in the library, and then probably next after that would be in the park system, where
Right.
the recreational parks team is encountering a lot of, you know, increased impacts from this. So we do talk about it within staff. I think there's a good amount of communication going on, and I know STAR has actually organized programs at the library where police and other community resources have come in and advised the library staff about how to cope with certain kinds of situations. So there's a good bit of collaboration going on there, but you're equally right that it's hidden. It's what we're doing as a team internally, and it's not very visible to the community. So we'd be happy to support this sort of a goal, and happy to help calibrate it.
Sure, as well. Great.
And you may want to have a letter to go with the brochure, for example, just kind of explaining why this is being said.
Well, it'll be great to get Brandy's input on that as well. So, certainly groundworks is a huge part of the front lines of the crisis.
So, Jan, can you leave section K in our binders for the next meeting? Because I've written all over it, and there's not enough room over here.
Yeah.
Might get a new letter.
Yeah, I don't want to get new copies without my notes.
Got it.
Thank you.
The other thing I just wanted to say, just as a general comment on the goals, that they certainly don't encompass everything that we get done in the year. We get done amazing, cool stuff that never showed up on a select board goal. I mean, it's great to have them, but I don't know, off the top of my head, like the plastic bag ban, it never appeared as a goal. It came up as a citizen initiative.
Right.
And it caught fire, and we responded, and we passed it, and people are mostly happy with it.
I think there might be, well, a personal goal to augment that ban with other items based on what the state law does and doesn't do.
Yeah, these are.
I only bring it up as an example of, it's certainly not a feel like, if something's not on here, we can't address it, because we can.
Oh, it's really the opposite. It started as, it was intended to be things that aren't.
What is it? I'm sorry.
The opposite of, if it's not in here, we can't do it. It's really, this is to address things that aren't typically on the work list of the town. It's not snow removal and pothole fixing and toilet flushing. Or, sorry, hydrant flushing. But
also important.
Toilet flushing is also available.
But we would hear things from the community. And it would be, I'm not going to, don't do this. But it would be instructive to go through and get all of, the last, I think it's only probably 4 years worth of having goals, and look at how they've changed over time. Because it really was, it's to respond to things we're hearing from the community that isn't necessarily on the work plan of the departments.
I think we're kind of saying the same thing in different ways.
Could be.
My point about the bag ban was that it's not something you typically would see a select board take up, but our community and our voters wanted us to take it up.
I have another goal to suggest. And that is transportation related, that we consider negotiating and working with the current bus line to do 3 things with regard to local bus service. One, to have visible bus stop signs, especially in the downtown. I think you have to have a double secret idea of where the bus stops are. And to consider lower fares to promote ridership, and to create a downtown loop wherein people from an agreed upon spot, north, west, and south of the downtown, can access the bus to kind of have a little loop to reduce traffic, provide a walkable link, and to provide mass transit sustainability. And I would consider this a sustainability goal, because increasing mass transit and reducing traffic in the downtown and just, providing increased mass transit ridership is an admirable goal for us to work on with the bus company.
Is the loop, is it the idea there would be someplace in West Brattleboro where you would hop on a bus and come downtown, do a little shopping, then you could get on the bus and go out to the Price Chopper and finish your shopping, then come back and go home, or go up to Putney Road, or, just.
Sure, I was just thinking like, I'm even not that familiar with what the bus routes are. But I think if I understood that, and if there were more bus stop signs, people would think of using the bus as a choice. And I think most people don't. I think it's a hidden resource that we have that could be more prominently displayed and more actively used.
So the current has sent out, because I got one at my home, an excellent new schedule, map and time schedule. They improved the website. They came before us 5 months ago?
Once or twice a year?
Some time ago, I don't remember. That long ago, I don't think. But it's certainly before you guys came on the board. I was under the impression they were doing a pretty good job based on some things I heard. I don't personally take the bus, but I actually discussed with Wendy that we were going to take a field trip to do that because.
I think we all had that same discussion, Wendy.
Oh, okay, good.
And I think that would be great because, I mean, do you know where the bus stops are?
See, now that's a goal I can really sink my teeth into.
Yeah.
Like, field trip for the board, we'd have to warn it, I guess.
Yeah.
You would have to warn it.
Like,
But I would hesitate voting for a goal that puts the job of the current into our laps and our staff's laps.
Well, we couldn't do it anyway. It's a separate.
We don't fund that. Well,
We do $50,000 of it.
Yes.
We don't,
but we don't fund the.
We don't control
it's a contribution towards the overall funding of the program. Yep.
But that
Well-
50 grand's got to buy us some kind of leverage.
Sure. We
Yeah.
can Put them in the chairs right over
I
there.
think one of the things that buys us is dollar tickets. You know, it's the low price that it currently has is because we give them that money.
but again, like, do you know where the bus stops are?
I know how to get from my house to Doug Richmond's in Guilford and back.
Well, good for you.
Yeah. I know I have to
The
go all the
question
way
is-
downtown before I can go down to the Price Chopper to catch the one bus that goes down to Guilford in the morning and the one that comes back in the afternoon.
I think the important question is, do the people who need to know,
Yeah.
they know?
Well, I think that's really a two-part question because there are people who need the bus and there are people who might want to use the bus, and they're two different populations. And I think expanding to the second group is where the sustainability goals come in.
That's where the cars disappear.
Yeah. And we start talking about the monorail. That's a little.
I saw that Simpsons episode.
Well, that's a joke to Chris Grotke.
There's a concrete
He'll like that
foundation
comment.
under Route 9 we can set it up on, already in the ground.
Yeah, you have to
And it
ask Steve
wrecks
about
the-
that. He really
And
doesn't.
it wrecks the pavement on Route 9 every year.
Well, enough with the inside jokes.
Can I make an observation? It's a broader observation about the
Reel us
process.
in.
No, I'm not sure it's going to do that, but I see you and completely understand you grappling with some of the details, particularly of the ones that have been proposed by members, you know, for your first consideration here. But I hesitated to say this a few minutes ago when you were talking about the fact, and it is a fact, that a lot else gets done during the year besides just the things that are identified as goals. There's no question that that's true. Lots of important things get done that are not on this list. It's equally true that a year from now, we won't look back and have accomplished every one of these, right? They're intended to keep our eyes looking out ahead of us at what we need to be working on, but we're not able to work on everything at once. This year's list in particular includes, you know, more things already than has been typical for us. And we're talking about adding some things, and I think we're talking rightly about adding some things. So one thing I'd urge you to think about when you come back and revisit this is that it's okay to have some stuff on here that isn't fully formed but identifies an issue that you want to address together. And it's equally okay to a year from now have ended up in a place that looks a lot different from the way it was described tonight, because that's just going to reflect the process of getting there and learning more and being engaged with the community and identifying some things we really can do about it and then doing it.
There also will be things that it's very difficult to make progress on and not much will happen.
And there will also be things that will surprise us, and town meeting will happen, and
Exactly.
all of that stuff.
I've got a couple I'm not even telling people about.
Oh boy.
Just surprised.
Double secret goals.
So what are we doing with these?
We're taping.
Talking about it next
Well, I
meeting.
think,
Unless you direct me otherwise tonight, what I would intend to do is modify what we gave you for in preparation for tonight's meeting to include what's been suggested so that you have the full list in front of you to work with next time, and you can then take it where you as a group need to take it.
Great.
Is that
okay, so I'm just trying to advocate for Brandy being able to put her take on it.
She can email.
But-
Well, aren't we gonna put her take on it as a whole.
Certainly, I just
from
thought
the
that maybe her perspective would be valuable before we try to squeeze it in a certain way, but I'm flexible. What do you think? Do you think?
So what I was
Take a
envisioning.
crack at it.
Yeah, let me be more explicit, and then you can tell me if you feel comfortable or if this is going too far with it. But what I heard was a public health header that doesn't exist yet, with Daniel's public health suggestion as item number 1 under it, and Liz's as item number 2 under it. And then a third item, I believe it is, yes, a third item under sustainability that would be the bus-related item. And if it's okay with you, what we might do is try to squeeze the bus one to a little more of its essence of working with the current to improve
Yeah.
blah, 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 something like that, as opposed to being so very specific. Is that okay? Great. If that's okay with the 4 of you, I think that'll put you in a position where you've got a working document that you can then do with as you please next time, but it'll at least be a complete working document in front of you at that time.
Okay. Okay. Does that please everyone? Yep. Awesome. No action required. Next, we wanted to briefly discuss the July Select Board meetings. Peter, do you want to just?
Yeah, so the Select Board has, over the last several years, gotten in the habit of not having one of the scheduled, where we have 2 every month, taking one of the meetings off in either June or July. I mentioned in the memo from May 1st that 2 years ago, we actually took off one of the July meetings and one of the August meetings, and we lived to regret that. September was brutal, and we were still catching up on things in October when we were trying to get started with the budget process, and it just, we should not go to 1 meeting per month for 2 months in a row. But if it suits the board, in July, we could take off we are scheduled to have a meeting on July 2nd and on July 16th. And if we canceled those 2 meetings and replaced them with a meeting on July 9th, we kind of space it right so that there'd be a 3-week break and a 4-week break. But never anything larger than the 4-week break, and it would only be the 1 meeting that would be canceled through the summer. So we thought that would be a workable way to get a little break in the summer, if that's what you want, and if that suits your calendars, because we know that you build around the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays, and this would change that for July.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
That's fine with me, but before I was elected to the Select Board, I made plans for August 6th. And I'm sure you'll get along without me.
It pleases my schedule, with the understanding that we have to be prepared for maybe a humdinger of a board meeting on the 9th, on July 9th.
Or on the first one in August.
True.
Because it's 3 weeks till, that's another 5 Tuesday month. So it would actually be 4 weeks until.
It'd be a 4-week break, right? There'd be 3 weeks between June 18th and July 9th, and then 4 weeks between July 9th and August 6th.
Yeah, we just did a 3-week, and I was starting to feel like,
this
well,
could
that's
be
getting to
habit
be-
forming.
Twitchy?
If you'd rather just
Predicted.
stay on with keeping the 2nd and 16th of July both on the calendar and move through, that's okay
personally,
too.
I think with enough public notice, because that's a concern I always have, is people we're on the 1st. And
That's
the
why we
3rd.
brought it to you now.
But
Exactly.
My informal vote is that it would work well for us and my schedule, but
Just off
chime
the
in.
top of my head, the 16th is right in the middle of the month, and it's our typical 3rd Tuesday, so we would just not be meeting on the 1st Tuesday. So it wouldn't be as
We're
confusing.
supposed to meet on the 9th.
But we're talking about replacing the 1st and 3rd with the 2nd.
With the
right?
2nd, yes, and
Yep.
I'm just saying, just not meet on the 1st and meet on the 3rd.
I'm confused.
You could do that, it would just reverse, you'd have a 4-week break and then a 3-week break instead of a 3-week break and then a 4-week break.
Okay. I don't know that it matters, except that sometimes other people schedule things on the second Tuesdays.
Yeah, but there's July 4th too. I have consulted my calendar for all of these dates and it's totally fine.
All of the above, yeah, or none of the above. Should we wait and see what Brandy says?
No, I did. Did you check in, Brandy?
I don't remember whether we did or not, so you want to leave this one for 2
No, let's
weeks?
just vote and see what happens.
And then she can come in and say, what were you thinking?
Or actually, I mean, you don't have to do this by vote. I think we did
Yeah,
craft
I
a
was
motion
wondering
for you,
about
but you don't have to do that. If it's your consensus that you'd like to do this, we'll check in with Brandy and make sure it works for her.
She is the
If
chair.
If it does not work for her, we'll be back to talk about it, but otherwise, we'll go ahead and make the change.
Great.
Okay?
The
Great.
change, did we end up on the
So it'll be
9th? Did we
the
end up
9th. We cancel the 2nd and the 16th and have one July meeting on the 9th, so long as that works for Brandy.
Pending Brandy's
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Yep. And what we'll do is we'll confirm it back to you as soon as we've got Brandy's confirmation one way or the other, and then we'll make sure the public is aware of it at next time, at our meeting next time.
Start the media machine.
Yeah.
All right.
Oops. Oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself.
Do we have anything else on our agenda?
Nope.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second
Right? Is that what you do?
Yeah.
That's what you do.
That's how you do it.
We even got a second. So all those in favor of adjourning? Aye. Unopposed?
The
Did it.
minute.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming and sticking out. And
Thank you for
me.
your lighthearted
Yes.
approach to sharing.
Yeah,
I
Patrick
was having
did,
to
yeah.
hold myself back from cracking jokes all this time.
Oh, good.
Well, good, I hope.